Chapter 1351, The Breeze 2. The master of the Red Dome realm hesitated for a moment, but didn't say anything in the end. Master Tian Dan was ready to pay such a dear price, just for some fire. It was obvious that the medicine he was planning to refine was extraordinary. He would not tell her the truth even if she asked, as it probably involved ancestral gods' secrets. Su Ping cupped his hands and bade them farewell. Then, he left the 9th floor along with the realm master and returned to the hall. Thou child, the depths of the heavenly fire are extremely dangerous. You must be fully prepared before you do anything. Although the pills are great, they're not worth the risk, said the realm master to Su Ping. I won't overdo things, said Su Ping. Then he left the fire god palace and entered the void to teleport back to his store. Once back in his store, he extended his perception beyond the pet room, only to discover that the streets were much more crowded. Also, most of them were high-level battle pet warriors, generally above the star state. Many were even ascendants. He also detected some familiar auras near the street. All his senior brothers were resting in a building on that same street. This place seems to have become the center of the celestial court. Su Ping's eyes glittered as he took in the scene. It had to be one of Shen Huang's arrangements. If anything happened, hiding in his store was the only choice. There was an ancient divine array in the celestial court, but they still weren't sure if it was strong enough to resist the attacks of a universe dominator. Rhea was already inside the celestial court's divine array. If the array gave out, Su Ping's store would be their last line of defense. 1-2. Su Ping's senses were spread throughout the planet, only to discover that the only celestial auras belonged to Kai Huo and Su Kang. His face turned cold. His warning back at the conference seemed to have been uttered in vain. Su Ping opened the pet room's door and entered the store's main space. The store was crowded at the moment, but in an orderly fashion. Nobody dared to cut in line. The store owner was Shen Huang's disciple and a top heavenly lord. Who would dare cause trouble? There were all kinds of rumors about Su Ping's identity, but the one thing that everybody had confirmed was that Shen Huang's disciple, who had risen to prominence since a few prior, was as strong as a top heavenly lord. Aside from Su Ping, what really kept everyone in check was the presence of the clerks in Su Ping's store. The goddess never concealed anything purposefully. All the ascendants could easily tell that the blonde behind the counter, other than being stunningly beautiful, was also a celestial. Her pressure was so overwhelming that every ascendant who had once met a celestial could tell. That was also the reason why no one dared to talk loudly. They glanced at the girl every now and then, fearing that they could piss her off. "You're back." Noticing his arrival, Joanna raised her head and stared at him with glittering eyes. As expected, Su Ping's aura had clearly changed again. He grows significantly every time he goes there. Does he really not have any bottlenecks to tackle? Joanna's eyes glittered. Su Ping's cultivation speed amazed her. The kid who at one time needed her protection had already surpassed her and was flying further away at a speed she couldn't understand. She finally understood Tang Ruyan, who felt frustrated and complained all day for a while. "Thank you for your hard work." Su Ping looked around and saw that Tang Ruyan, the most excited of all, was about to jump at him. He said to her telepathically, "There's something I need to do. I'll be back." Tang Ruyan's rushing figure stopped abruptly, and then Su Ping disappeared. The next moment, reappeared inside a building on the same street. "Master, you're back." Shen Huang, who was watching a virtual battlefield, was quite taken aback by Su Ping appearing out of nowhere, but he managed to hold back since it was the second time happening. He said with great relief, "It's great to have you back. The celestial god in your store said that you go to dangerous places every time to leave. I was truly worried that you wouldn't be able to return." "You went to my store?" asked Su Ping. Shen Huang nodded. "Back in that meeting, you asked everyone to come and join the alliance. We've been in negotiations with them ever since. Kai Huo and I talked to some celestials separately, but none of them seemed to be willing. I think the master of the Black Desolation Star Zone had already reached an agreement with them." Su Ping narrowed his eyes. What's their attitude right now? Just like before, they only backed off a little bit. Their main concern is that they won't get any say in major decisions. Shen Huang heaved a sigh. They worry that their troops will be sent to the front lines as cannon fodder. Those Celestials have lived unrestrained for far too long. The primordial Empyrean master never set any rules for us. We were like emperors of our respective dynasties, seeing to our star zones. The only rule set by the planet of origin was that we mustn't fight each other and destroy the universe. Other than that, there are only a few restraints, so they're very uncomfortable with joining the alliance. Su Ping realized what was going on and said indifferently, "These are special times. They have to adapt, even if it's uncomfortable. Are the soldiers in the front lines comfortable with fighting the worms? Are the refugees who have been forced to migrate from their destroyed planets comfortable with living among people who speak another accent on another planet? Nobody's comfortable during the war. They think they're different from ordinary people and feel that they can negotiate, but that's just them overthinking." Shen Huang slightly changed his expression. Although Su Ping was quite blunt, he knew it was the truth. Su Ping snorted and said, "They're just frogs at the bottom of a well, so arrogant while they are merely celestials. They don't know what those creatures are capable of. Inform them and convene a meeting. I need them to obey. Just erase them if they don't know any better. It'll be easier to subdue and unite all the star zones without having them as obstacles." Shen Huang was greatly surprised. Is Su Ping getting ready for a killing spree? In any case, those guys were celestials. If Su Ping enraged them all, even if he could kill them, it would be a difficult task. Besides, the alien lurking among the worms could be anywhere in the universe. Su Ping could be caught in a dangerous situation if he decided to leave the protection of the celestial court. "If we hold a virtual conference, it'll be like last time at best. We can threaten them, but they won't be intimidated," said Shen Huang. Su Ping had managed to hurt one man in the conference, but that was just a threat. Even if he could override his permissions thanks to his Tao expertise, the man could exit the astral nexus at any moment. They won't get away as easily as before. Who says you can't kill someone who is connected in a distant place? Su Ping's eyes were cold. "I will have them know that I can wipe them out, even if they're billions of stars away. Those frogs in the well will know that there's still a long way to go in their cultivation journey, and that there are a lot of battle methods that they cannot imagine." Shen Huang was rather appalled. He knew that Su Ping would never brag. Could it be that Su Ping is really able to kill a celestial located on the other side of the universe? That was just a fantasy for him, completely beyond his understanding. "Are you as strong as a universe dominator right now?" Shen Huang couldn't help but ask. His heart was pounding. It would be shocking if that was true. Universe dominator. In the entire history of the universe, they stood out and were deemed legends without giving detailed descriptions. Even the primordial Empyrean master was only suspected to be a universe dominator. That was the ultimate level that Celestials pursued. Su Ping was already there. How long has Su Ping cultivated? I haven't tried yet, but it's likely that I'm not. Still, it shouldn't be difficult for me to kill them. Su Ping shook his head. He felt much more confident after the heavenly fire polished his body. However, he didn't think he could beat a god emperor head-on just yet. Shen Huang was shocked and speechless. Su Ping talked about killing a celestial with ease, and the target would be far away, somewhere in the universe. If he could kill a target from such a remote distance without even seeing them, wasn't he a universe dominator? Chapter 1352, Returning to the Celestial State 1. Shen Huang sobered up and said to Su Ping directly, "I will inform Kai Huo and Su Kong first." Su Ping nodded, and the former instantly informed Kai Huo and Su Kong, who were in other buildings down the street. They arrived shortly after. Shen Huang opened the array in the building to let them in. "Brother Su." "Hello." Kai Huo and Su Kong both greeted Su Ping after seeing him. "Brother Su, you're finally out. Let me tell you, those guys are still unwilling to obey. I think you can go ahead and send the Saint Heir from the planet of origin to teach them a lesson and establish dominance, said the short-tempered Kai Huo the moment he saw Su Ping. Shen Huang shook his head and added, I've told Su Ping the details. Su Kong's eyes glittered. He looked at Su Ping and said, What's your plan then? We'll summon them for a meeting. Ask them all to be present, said Su Ping to Kai Huo. They won't learn even if we teach them a harsh lesson. We had already warned them last time. Now I will finish off the leader of the Black Desolation Star Zone. Then we'll ask the remaining Celestials to come and join us immediately to resist the worms. You'll finish off the leader of the Black Desolation Star Zone. Both Celestials were dumbfounded after hearing Su Ping's shocking proposal. They looked at him in shock. Kai Huo quickly said, Brother Su, there's no need for you to go there in person. The alien among the worms might show up. What if? I won't leave this place. I don't have to meet them in the flesh in order to kill them, said Su Ping. Both of them felt dazed and gave the young man confused looks. He can kill the leader of the Black Desolation Star Zone without going to see him. How? Is he going to make use of the power of the mysterious magic store backing him? They didn't know exactly what power the ancient store had, so they couldn't help but think randomly. You'll find out at the conference. Now ask them to participate, said Su Ping. He didn't want to waste any time. He had to return to the Archean divinity and continue his cultivation once the matter was taken care of. Okay. Kai Huo didn't ask further, holding back on his curiosity. He would find out the answer very soon anyway. However, Su Ping's claims left him and Su Kong in shock. No matter how the boy was going to do it, he was clearly confident about it. That was a terrifying ability. I've already notified them. We'll probably have to wait for a while, said Shen Huang. Su Ping nodded and looked at his master. Master, last time I said that I would help you return to the celestial state. Now I've found a powerful path for you to recover. Are you willing to accept? Shen Huang was dazed. Naturally, he never forgot Su Ping's promise. However, the matter was of critical importance. He asked solemnly, Is it really possible? You were in the celestial state and you had your own small universe. It was merely destroyed, so I'll simply go ahead and build a new one for you. It's not difficult at all, said Su Ping. Shen Huang was lost for words, not knowing whether Su Ping was only trying to reassure him, or if it was truly that easy. Anyway, he was no longer able to understand his disciple. Kai Huo and Su Kong looked at each other in bewilderment. Kai Huo asked tentatively, Should we give you some privacy? It doesn't matter, said Su Ping. We have a meeting to attend later. It's fine for you to stay. Su Kong moved her lips but didn't say anything. They were also extremely curious about how Su Ping would help Shen Huang return to the celestial state. Master, the small universe that I'm going to build for you is founded on the power of time and space. In the future, if you can grasp a Tao heart for your universe, you may be able to activate its true power, said Su Ping. He didn't pass his universe of chaos to his master. Although extremely powerful, it had strict demands on every bodily aspect. Even if he did make one, his master would be unable to handle it. It would be like giving a ball weighing 10,000 kilograms to a child, who would only get killed in the process. That universe of time and space was one that Su Ping picked after reading a lot of information in the godly library, considering his master's status. Furthermore, that universe was mainly founded on the power of time and space. If his master contemplated carefully and found his Tao heart, giving the universe true attributes of time and space, he would become a strong God Emperor. Although Su Ping had yet to condense a Tao heart, it didn't mean that he couldn't feel one. He just hadn't condensed the Tao heart he wanted just yet. As for the other Tao hearts, Su Ping could condense them at any moment. After all, having seen 3 unparalleled Tao hearts from the Golden Crow ancestor, Su Ping was already at that level and could condense them if he so wished. Universe of time and space, Tao heart. Shen Huang listened to Su Ping. Although he could barely understand, he simply memorized everything, inwardly drawing a strange and bitter smile. Given the current situation, he could no longer tell which between them was the master and which was the disciple. Kai Huo and Su Kong both listened to Su Ping quietly. It was fine even if they didn't understand. They too could just memorize it. Maybe they could find an answer later, and maybe they could ask Su Ping for pointers. Rise. Su Ping stood in front of his master and slowly extended his hands. Pure golden light was condensed in his palms. Meanwhile, above his head, the universe of chaos was slowly opened. An ancient and distant aura of chaos began to spread out. Something ancient seemed to have resurrected in that room, and some majestic power was descending. All three of them were so shocked, feeling as though about to be suppressed. Chapter 1353, Returning to the Celestial State 2. Is that Brother Su's universe? Both Kai Hu and Su Kong looked at the phenomenon happening above Su Ping's head with shock in their eyes. Although they too had universes, they deeply felt the vast difference between universes at that moment. Compared to the young man's universe, theirs were like balloons in front of a diamond. Dense, magnificent, profound, ancient, all kinds of feelings made the two of them be in awe. The next moment, a tremendous amount of power poured out of Su Ping's universe and entered Shen Huang's body through Su Ping's hands. The latter laid his hand on his master's shoulder, and the pure power of chaos was transmitted continuously. It was the most ancient and pure power from the beginning of the universe. Shen Huang had gotten in touch with the power of chaos before, but only a little bit from the mysterious realms of the universe. He stored it in his body and considered it a treasure. However, so much of that power was flowing into him that he felt as if he were in an ocean. He was shocked while feeling extremely comfortable. Hold your breath, focus your attention, relax your body and feel the formation of the universe, especially the great Tao inside it. This is a rare opportunity. It will be helpful for later when you condense your Tao heart. Su Ping's voice entered his master's head. Their roles seemed to have swapped at the moment. It was Su Ping teaching his master. Shen Huang wasn't bothered by it. He had already experienced a lot of things he had never experienced as a master with Su Ping as his disciple. Shen Huang focused his attention as instructed. He felt that the power of chaos inside his body was concentrated by a great attraction force. The aura of great Tao was instantly spreading out. It flew out of Su Ping's universe of chaos and surrounded the man's body. Very soon, the interwoven great Tao gradually compressed into the prototype of a universe. Shen Huang devoted himself to the task and examined everything. He felt inexplicably shocked. It was the first time for him to see how simple and beautiful it was to condense a universe. All the great Tao was founded, and like a piece of artwork, the shape of the universe appeared. Outside, Kai Huo and Su Kong looked at Shen Huang and Su Ping, who were enshrouded in breathtaking auras. They couldn't help but step back, in case they were caught in it. The two of them felt more shocked as time passed. It was as if they were witnessing the birth of a star. The terrifying power was already taking shape inside Shen Huang's body. He really did it. The two of them were shocked. Su Ping was merely in the ascendant state, let alone a celestial, and yet he had helped his master return to the celestial state. Genius wasn't nearly enough to describe him. He was absolutely unpredictable and unimaginable. Condense. Su Ping's voice echoed in Shen Huang's head like the whisper of an ancient god coming from the void. Come. Instantly, all the powers in his body were quickly condensed, as if heeding a command. The core of a universe was gradually born. Then, as the power stretched out, the universe became bigger and bigger until it was fully constructed. All the changes were visible to the naked eye. A powerful aura was constantly spreading out of the core of the new universe and filling Shen Huang's body. Power was surging with his body as the center. The extraordinary aura of the celestial state was then revealed, coming from Shen Huang. His clone had finally advanced to the celestial state. Boom! Thunder was rumbling in the sky above the building. At that moment, everybody milling about on the street couldn't help but look up at the cloud-filled sky. It's a heavenly tribulation. He did it. Both Kai Huo and Su Kong were shocked. Shen Huang had returned to the celestial state. There were essentially three celestial cultivators on their side. Adding Kea Follett and Yi Chen, who was imprisoned by Su Ping, there would be five celestial state cultivators. It was almost half of all the celestial cultivators of the universe. Is anyone undergoing a heavenly tribulation? Who is it? I can't even see the boundary. Is someone rising to the ascendant state? Everybody on the street was whispering. The dark clouds filled the sky above the street and covered the whole city. However, upon seeing it from a higher perspective, one would discover that the heavenly tribulation didn't just cover the city, but also the entire continent and even the whole planet. Lightning bolts were also surging in the void outside the planet, which gradually turned red from their original purple. A bloody tribulation. It's a bloody tribulation. Shen Huang didn't invoke a bloody tribulation back then. Kai Huo was rather shocked. Not only is Shen Huang returning to the celestial state, but he will be even stronger. Su Kang was also shocked and speechless. Their senses spread beyond the universe, allowing them to look down on that planet like a god would. Then, they saw that the planet was surrounded by lightning bolts where redness surged and hopped now and then. Su Ping opened his eyes and removed his hand from his master's shoulder. Magnificent auras were surging out of the latter's body. The work was done. His master had to pass the heavenly tribulation on his own. Shen Huang also opened his eyes, which were glittering, as if they could pierce through stones. Shen Huang found the celestial state power he had been missing as he felt the unparalleled aura inside his body. What excited him was that this power was even greater than before. He thought he was imagining things. A bloody tribulation. Shen Huang sensed the heavenly tribulation enshrouding him and felt that something majestic was staring at him. He then took a deep breath and examined the new universe in his body, knowing it wasn't a dream. He had truly embarked on another road, which was even more terrifying. Such a road was established by Su Ping just for him. Su Ping, can I resist this heavenly tribulation? Shen Huang looked at Su Ping, who stood by his side. Su Ping looked at him encouragingly. No problem, I got you. Okay. Shen Huang felt reassured. He laughed and proudly rose to the sky, enduring the lightning strikes coming from the void. While standing inside the building, Su Ping watched quietly and gradually started to frown. He discovered that there seemed to be a crack deep inside the lightning bolt cluster. All the power of the heavenly tribulation came from that point. He had never seen such crack before. However, he was now able to see a lot of things that he couldn't after entering the original Tao world. Is that a crack in the universe? Is the heavenly tribulation coming from a place beyond the universe? Su Ping's eyes glittered. Lightning struck at that moment. Shen Huang performed his celestial state skills and fought the heavenly tribulation, roaring. The lightning bolts struck one after the other, until a series of terrifying, bloody lightning bolts that seemed to be slashing the planet apart reached down. However, Shen Huang blocked them with his weapons and secret treasures. Since he recovered his cultivation, Shen Huang was able to use his former weapons. All the dispersing power of the heavenly tribulation was erased by Su Ping. None of it caused damage to the planet. Both Kai Huo and Su Kang looked at Shen Huang nervously. After all, it was a dangerous, bloody tribulation, and there was nothing they could do to help. The tribulation would only grow stronger if they intervened. A long while later, the lightning bolts gradually disappeared. In midair, Shen Huang was clad in ragged clothes, painting a miserable sight. There were bloody wounds on his body, making him look like a beggar, and he also seemed to be exhausted. However, an exuberant aura rose from his body after the tribulation started to fade away, like mushrooms after the rain. A dazzling light was emanated by his body, and his ragged clothes were gone. His skin formed a layer of golden armor that made him look like a glowing god. He did it. The two friendly celestials were greatly relieved, and quite envious too. Both of them sensed that Shen Huang was clearly stronger than before. In particular, his newly formed universe was floating above his head like the sun, imposing pressure from a long distance away. They even suspected that they wouldn't be able to defeat him in a head-on clash, even though he had just returned to the celestial state. The crack is gone. Su Ping gazed at the depths of the heavenly tribulation. The crack transmitting the power was gone after the clouds dispersed. Nothing seemed to have appeared in the void. There were no signs left over. Chapter 1354, Execution of Causality 1. Unfortunately, I'm not strong enough to spread my senses that far. Su Ping sensed that the world beyond the crack had to be extremely precious. It involved the source of that world. Maybe the Golden Crow ancestor knew something about it. After pondering about it, Su Ping felt the urge to visit the Golden Crow world again. However, it wouldn't be easy to meet their ancestor. Last time, he only managed to communicate with him telepathically by using a drop of essence blood in his bloodline. According to the chief elder, it was a rare opportunity. The situation may not be repeatable even if he received another drop of essence blood. Xiao Su. Shen Huang dived from the sky and rushed into the building, thrilled. His brimming power made him deeply realize how strong he was. It was all thanks to Su Ping's help. Kai Huo and Su Kong snapped out of their shock and said enviously, "Congratulations, Shen Huang." Shen Huang glanced at them. He used to feel some pressure when he looked at them with his cloned body. They were celestials, even if they concealed their auras. But at that moment, he felt as if he was looking down at them. Although he had just returned to the celestial state, and their levels were the same, he somehow had the feeling that he could beat the two of them at the same time. Kai Huo and Su Kong also sensed their friend's change. His eyes were different, sharper, and filled with the gravitas of an emperor. They were quite envious. Everybody said that a great teacher could help his disciples a lot. Never had they heard that a teacher could be helped by his disciple to such a degree. "Master, how do you feel?" Su Ping focused his attention and smiled at his master. Shen Huang replied, "Fantastic. I also feel that I can condense a celestial state clone with the Tao of my previous universe. It's possible if conditions allow. However, if there isn't enough time and energy, it would be best to aim for the universe dominator realm," said Su Ping. Shen Huang smiled and said, "Of course, but our talent is limited. I don't think there's a chance to condense a Tao heart in the next 12,000 years. It's hard to say. Maybe all you need is an epiphany." Su Ping shook his head. There was a catastrophe underway. His master's journey to higher levels would be delayed if he were to be distracted as he built a clone. Shen Huang and the others looked at each other with bitter smiles. It may seem like just an epiphany to Su Ping, but to them, having epiphanies was extremely difficult. Becoming a universe dominator, that was their dream for countless years. It was the final cultivation goal for them. "Shen Huang really found a great disciple," said Kai Huo with a sigh, an obvious envy in his voice. Shen Huang coughed and changed the subject. "Everyone should be there for the meeting already. Shall we go?" "Okay," Su Ping nodded. Their minds quickly delved into the astral nexus. Su Ping then received Shen Huang's invitation to the Celestial State Conference Room. After choosing to accept, the virtual space in front of the young man quickly began to expand. Then, a conference room appeared at the end of said space. Although considered a room, there were actually no walls. Around him was the boundless universe. There was a long table floating at the center, with 24 chairs flanking both sides. The chairs were being occupied by figures with powerful auras. The throne ahead was usually reserved for the primordial Empyrean master. The planet of origin had always been responsible for scheduling meetings. The throne was vacant at the moment, and so were the seats that belonged to the Saint Kings. The other Celestials sat in their respective seats. 5 of them had shown up. Adding Su Ping and the other new arrivals, there were altogether 9 people. 2 Celestials had perished. One was killed by Su Ping in the Mayhem Star Zone, and the other died at the hands of the alien in the Worm Tide. Only 10 of the 12 Celestials remained. 2 people haven't come yet. Kai Huo looked around and frowned. Shen Huang said calmly, "They should be coming soon. It's not like them to keep us waiting. They're probably caught in something." "Shen Huang, do you accept our proposal? You've brought your disciple here again. Are you going to do the same as before? "If so, I'm leaving right now," said a celestial old fellow in a cold tone. The others gave him frosty glances. Although Su Ping had threatened them by hurting the leader of the Black Desolation Star Zone through the astral nexus, that was it. None of the Celestials were cowards. If they accepted the terms, they would be submitting to someone else. It had been years since they submitted to anyone. Not even the primordial Empyrean Master would treat them that way. Shen Huang, I admit that this disastrous moment calls for an alliance, but you must not consider yourselves the main representatives of justice. Everybody here has been resisting the worms and fighting the catastrophe. You want to claim all the power like a dictator. That's the reason why the alliance has never been formed," said a tall celestial cultivator with ice in his voice. Kaihuo glared at him. "So, in your opinion, we're the ones holding everyone back. We've asked you to join forces with us in half a month, but you refused. I wonder what the leader of the Black Desolation Star Zone offered you. He once conspired with the devil from the Age of Deities and caused trouble to every star zone in the universe, so he's afraid that we'll get back at him. But are we really that petty?" Chapter 1355, Execution of Causality 2. The celestial expert of the Red Shadow Star Zone snorted and said, "Kaihuo, stop spouting nonsense. We're unwilling to make an alliance with you not because of what happened before, it's all in the past. Shen Huang's disciple is here. Nobody will forget what he said last time. He wants everybody to listen to his beck and call. Who does he think he is? What does he think we are?" Kaihuo said angrily, "Respecting the strong is the law of the universe. If the primordial Empyrean Master were still here and asked you to obey, would you have objected?" "You said it, the primordial Empyrean Master. Does the boy think he can compare? The primordial Empyrean Master has perished. Even if his power is comparable to the celestial state and is even stronger than normal celestials, that is not nearly enough for him to command the entire universe," said the celestial cultivator of the Red Shadow Star Zone with a snort. Kaihuo was about to say something, but then Su Ping extended a hand and stopped him. "There are a few yet to arrive. No need to waste time on them." Kaihuo was dazed for a moment. He held back and stopped talking. This triggered alarms in the other 5 Celestials. Kaihuo was famous for his short temper, and yet he chose to hold back after Su Ping said a few words. Could he really kill a Celestial that easily? Their disciples and subordinates had personally seen Su Ping killing and high, so they were rather vigilant of him. Quite crowded, wouldn't you say? All of a sudden, 2 people appeared and sat on the vacant seats. One of them was Hai Huang, the leader of the Black Desolation Star Zone. He was as slim as a shadow, and he was sneering at the moment. The other was Long Yang, a tall fellow who looked like an ancient emperor ensconced in his throne. Even though his face was covered in shadow, his gravitas could be easily felt. "Shen Huang is here again with his disciple. Is he going to threaten us again?" Hai Huang narrowed his eyes and said, "I hope this will be our last negotiation meeting. Think carefully. Our terms are not outrageous. Don't keep wasting our time. If your disciple is impudent again—" "Shut up," said Su Ping before he could finish. The 2 words were spat like nails. Hai Huang changed his expression and became sullen. Then he heard Su Ping's 3rd word, "Die." After he said that, the entire conference room was filled with a terrifying power. Su Ping's body released a dazzling golden light that illuminated that space like a star. His hair fluttered and his body was glowing. He looked so intimidating that all the Celestials peeled their eyes. Blade of Causality. Su Ping suddenly pointed with 2 fingers. The void was twisted in front of him, and an invisible power started to spread like ripples, passing by all the celestial cultivators. While logged on the virtual astral nexus, all the Celestials felt that a stream of coldness brushed past them. The next moment, a green helical-shaped light suddenly snapped out of Su Ping's fingertips and slashed at Hai Huang like a strange sword. Again! Hai Huang felt shocked and infuriated. Last time he was caught unprepared and got hurt when Su Ping attacked him last time. Now the guy didn't even let him finish. That was too outrageous. Die! Hai Huang also took action. With the astral nexus as a platform, Although he had a high clearance level being a celestial cultivator, it was unable to simulate his real power, especially not his swallowing universe. After all, the astral nexus was only a technological product from the planet of origin and was unable to emulate a real universe. However, the power he could muster was probably enough to resist the attack, at least, Hai Huang thought so. But the next moment, the blade of causality passed through the power of darkness he released, as if they were moving in two different dimensions. After that, the blade of causality struck Hai Huang and sliced him in half. Wait. The moment Hai Huang was hit, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. My attack was bypassed. It didn't even touch Su Ping's attack. Also, on the Black Sky planet in the center of the Black Desolation Star Zone, in a luxurious palace, Hai Huang, who was sitting there, suddenly opened his eyes and lowered his head in shock, only to discover a green helical sword had been stabbed through his chest. The irresistible tearing force was ripping his body apart. Even his consciousness and the universe in his body were also being torn. This is impossible. Hai Huang was so shocked that his soul almost flew out of his body. That attack was identical to the one he suffered on the astral nexus, but he was physically in the Black Desolation Star Zone, and Su Ping was in the Celestial Court. They were half a universe away from each other. Su Ping had actually heard him over such a long distance. Master. In the palace, his third disciple was reporting the situation of the war at the border of the Black Desolation Star Zone. He looked at his master, utterly shocked. At the same time, in the Astral Nexus conference room, Hai Huang's face was twisted. He looked at Su Ping with shock and fury. What exactly was that move? How did you do it? You're not in the Celestial Court. Impossible. You cannot possibly reflect the attack made on the Astral Nexus to the place where I am. The other Celestials were flabbergasted. Hai Huang failed to block Su Ping's attack and was even babbling nonsense, which was quite surprising. This is an attack of causality, which isn't bound by distance, unless you're hiding somewhere beyond this universe. Su Ping stared at him coldly and added, "Don't think I can't kill you just because you're in the Black Desolation Star Zone. You will certainly die today." Attack of causality. Hai Huang had never heard of such a thing. He said with shock and fury, "I will find you." After that, his figure blurred, and he logged off the astral nexus. Meanwhile, he suddenly stood up in his palace and he said with shock and fury, "Hurry, activate the array. There are enemies here." His third disciple was stunned. However, seeing he was wounded, the young man quickly accepted the order and left. Soon after, a dark blue array surfaced on the enormous planet. That was an array he had obtained in a mysterious realm. Even if a heaven master wasn't there, it could still resist a celestial state attack. Since the celestial state experts had such trump cards, even the primordial Empyrean master was very friendly to them, never imposing his commands. After all, they would simply go into hiding there if they actually rebelled. Such an array could easily block a dozen celestials. Hai Huang left. Back in the conference room, everybody was surprised to see that Hai Huang was gone. Upon remembering what he said, they couldn't help but glance at Su Ping and Shen Huang. Did they truly travel across the universe and lurk on Hai Huang's planet to ambush him during the meeting? Next to Su Ping Shen Huang, Kai Huo and Su Kang looked at the former in shock. They knew the truth. Su Ping had been with them all the time. It was impossible for him to launch an ambush from such a distance. However, Su Ping was really able to hurt a celestial who was billions of light years away. His attack bypassed any distance. That was terrifying. "You must die even if you leave." Su Ping coldly raised his hand again. Instantly, 3 of the green sword auras of causality darted out and disappeared from the astral nexus. At the same time, in the Black Sky planet's palace, Hai Huang was trying to remove the special power in his chest when he suddenly felt something. He raised his head, only to see 3 green and sharp auras approaching at a fast speed. He lost his cool and screamed, "This is impossible!" Quickly taking action, a dark universe appeared behind his back. It was his swallowing universe which went forward, trying to crush the 3 attacks. However, the three attacks had condensed Su Ping's power of chaos. They flew out like three daggers, penetrating his universe and nailing his body to the throne behind him. One of the daggers happened to hit him in the forehead, piercing through his skull and extinguishing his soul. Impossible! Hai Huang couldn't believe it until his dying breath that Su Ping had launched the attack all the way from the celestial court. His only thought was that the guy was lurking outside of his palace. Chapter 1356, Deterrence 1. Is there a traitor? A lot of thoughts flashed through Hai Huang's heart in the end, but he could not think any further. The sword aura of causality contained the power of Su Ping's universe. It destroyed his universe as well as his body and soul. Su Ping's constitution of the primitive Chaos Clan was made of many constitutions, such as the original soul entity, the divine body, and the ancient deity constitutions. Once they merged and evolved into that of the primitive Chaos Clan, they didn't just disappear. Instead, they stayed in Su Ping's body, like the Golden Crow bloodline, giving his attack a lot more attributes. What's that noise? Outside the palace, both disciples and guards realized that something was wrong. They rushed in, even without their master's permission. After they broke into the palace, they witnessed a scene they would never forget. Their master was seated in his throne, with a shocked and frightened face. There were 3 bloody holes on his chest and forehead. Not a wisp of vitality remained. The entire palace was silent and cold, like hell itself. After being dazed for a moment, they recovered and rushed over crazily to check their master's injury. One of the heavenly lords hurriedly reversed time and space in an attempt to bring their master back to life. However, even though time and space changed, their master remained motionless on the throne. While time rolled backwards in the palace and a lot of people appeared and disappeared, Hai Huang was as dead as a still rock. He simply sat on the throne. He couldn't be brought back to life by revering time and space. Their master was dead within the limits of time and space that the heavenly Lord disciple could manipulate, which ranged from the past 1,000 years and the 1,000 years to follow. It meant that the attack had killed all of their master's presence during those 2,000 years. What a cruel and terrifying attack. That was only the time and space that heavenly Lord disciple could reverse. It doesn't work. The disciple breathed heavily, nearly exhausted. Despair and fright appeared in his face. His head even went blank for a moment. As a matter of fact, he knew he couldn't change anything by revering time and space when he confirmed his master's death. After all, his master could have blocked the attack on his own if he could revive his master by revering time and space. What happened? Master was fine a moment ago. The disciple who was ordered to activate the array had finally returned. He was shocked by the scene. Let me see what happened. The disciple who reversed time and space had a contorted face. He felt grieved by the death of his master and also terrified as he stood inside the palace. His master's murderer was very likely still lurking about while he was still in the open. He knew it would be pointless to escape if the guy could kill his master without alerting anyone. This time he reversed time and space again, but he didn't focus on master. Instead, his power covered the temple as he hoped to dig out the truth. Soon after, time was rolled back to a few minutes earlier. They then saw the horrifying scene that took place in the palace. As it was only a harmless projection, they only saw a few green lights darting in. Their master unleashed his universe in an attempt to resist the attack, only to be run through and killed while seated on his throne. After that, they rushed into the palace. None of them could believe it. Their master had died just like that. They didn't see the warlike scenario they expected or any enemy. There were only a few green lights and their master died on the spot. He couldn't fight back at all. Almost instantly, everybody's hearts were enshrouded by a great fear. What kind of existence executed our master? Meanwhile, in the conference room, inside the astral nexus. Once he felt causality disperse, Su Ping said slowly, Hai Huang is already dead. Is anyone else going to disobey? What? Everybody present was shocked. Shen Huang, Su Kang, and Kai Hua were the most shocked of all. They looked at Su Ping in fright, knowing he wasn't just bluffing. Does it mean that Su Ping truly killed Hai Huang in such a short amount of time? Su Ping's body is still in Shen Huang's room. Part of his consciousness was even invested in the astral nexus session. He can kill a celestial cultivator from such a distance, in that status. They were absolutely astounded, but they had to believe it was true. Who are you trying to fool? The other celestials sobered up and looked at Su Ping with shock and suspicion. One of them became sullen and said, I didn't expect you to be sordid enough to ambush Hai Huang during the meeting. Still, I don't think Hai Huang would die that easily. He and I survived the dangerous Tianyu mysterious realm together. His survival abilities are beyond your wildest imagination. Su Ping glanced at him coldly, not bothering to waste time talking back. He turned around and said to his master, Master, do you have people posted in the Black Desolation Star Zone? Or maybe just invite his disciples over. Let them check their master's status and you'll know if I'm lying. Shen Huang snapped out of his shock and immediately said, I'll make arrangements. He didn't say anything out loud. Of course, he had spies watching in the Black Desolation Star Zone and many other star zones for that matter. Similarly, there were other star zones, spies in his celestial court. It was an unspoken but mutual understanding. Some of the spies were obvious, while others were so well hidden that even he didn't know about them. Chapter 1357, Deterrence 2. The spy he had sent out was Hai Huang's disciple. The guy had already been one of his men before he was accepted by Hai Huang as a disciple. He had done the man a great favor, erasing the man's past and reshaping his life, before he sent the fellow to Hai Huang. However, he certainly wouldn't publicize the matter in front of that many people. He could reach out to the spy in secret. Shen Huang immediately split some of his consciousness and contacted said disciple with special code, all to be briefed about the situation. Meanwhile, he sent out invitations to a few of Hai Huang's disciples on the astral nexus, with his celestial state expert permissions. One of the disciples accepted his invitation. Shen Huang quickly explained what had happened and asked the lad to check his master. My master's fine. There's no need to worry about him, Senior Shen Huang, the disciple quickly replied. Shen Huang raised his eyebrows. Naturally, he wouldn't suspect what Su Ping said. He soon realized what the guy was doing. He sneered and asked, Did something happen to your master? Is he dead? The man was obviously stunned after hearing that Shen Huang pointed out the truth, but quickly realized a lot of things and gnashed his teeth as he replied, Did you do it? My master objected to joining forces with you, but he wasn't opposed to the alliance itself. You were just trying to take advantage of the situation. You people call yourselves leaders of the universe, and yet you ambushed my master at such a dangerous moment. Hilarious. You of all people know what kind of person your master was. I'll give you 3 minutes to pick out a leader amongst yourselves. Then I'll invite him to this conference room, said Shen Huang coldly. The man looked awful. Their master was dead. They weren't confident of tackling Shen Huang without the help of a celestial expert and just using the treasures their master left. Besides, their master had been killed even after the array was activated. They didn't know how he was killed. They didn't even see Shen Huang. That had truly been an unprecedented method. Without further ado, Shen Huang ended the communication. At the same time, Shen Huang's projection in the conference room said, I've already asked Long Chen, Hai Huang's disciple. He said that his master truly is dead, so I asked him to talk with the others and elect a leader for this meeting. If you don't believe me, feel free to contact them yourselves. The other Celestials were rather shocked by the news. Considering how Shen Huang had expressed the fact, it was probably true. Actually, they had been reaching out to Hai Huang's disciples and their spies for updates, even before Shen Huang said anything. Moments after, the Celestials who had been informed became sullen. They looked at Shen Huang and Su Ping with anger and vigilance. A celestial cultivator was gone, just like that. Very few Celestials had ever died in the history of the universe. Even those who died mostly perished in extremely dangerous, mysterious realms. Few had died while fighting each other. In less than a century, 2 celestial experts had died due to infighting. If Shen Huang, Kai Huo, Su Kong and Su Ping had joined hands, they truly had the power to kill Hai Huang. Shen Huang, a catastrophe is underway. Are you really going to continue this nonsense? Said Long Yang gloomily, while giving angry looks at Su Ping and the others. It is you who are speaking nonsense, said Shen Huang coldly. Forming an alliance is the best strategy to resist the worms together, all to minimize the sacrifices. You've been postponing it all for your own interests. Do you know how many people die every day? Why don't you accept our terms? Are they outrageous? We simply want to keep our power. Do we not even get to vote since we are celestials? Said another expert angrily. We've been over this a million times. Are we still going to debate on that? Said Kai Huo coldly. Not only do you want to vote, you also want to establish a supervision committee where everybody has equal votes. You know fully well who's going to be in charge. We're not on the same side. You have 4 votes. As long as you persuade 2 or 3 of us, you will hold the power. Is that not enough? Said someone. The ever-taciturn Su Kong said in a frosty tone, looks like you're not on the same side. In fact, you'll consider us a common foe in order to protect yourselves. Weakness is your common ground. You'll naturally gang up because you can't resist us on your own. You're just grasping at straws. Getting to the bottom of it, you simply want a dictatorship, roared someone furiously. Shen Huang was going to talk again, but Su Ping raised his hand and stopped him. Let Hai Huang's disciple in, said Su Ping. His voice was extremely calm, guessing his mood was impossible. However, all the attendees' faces changed a bit after hearing what Su Ping said. The conference room fell quiet for a moment. Shen Huang nodded and immediately reached out to Hai Huang's disciples. He soon confirmed their leader and sent out an invite. A figure appeared in the conference room and gradually became clear. It was a tall and handsome young man. He looked around and saw all the celestial experts. He slightly changed his expression. He had seen those experts before. Once he looked around, he noticed Su Ping, who wasn't a celestial, and discovered that all the other celestials were there, except for his master. That meant that only his master had perished. He thought for a moment about all kinds of possibilities, even suspecting that they had joined forces to kill his master. It's an honor to meet you, celestial state masters. The young man lowered his head and spoke in a low voice, neither arrogant nor humble. Hanjai, did something happen to your master? Tell us what happened. Did Shen Huang and the others gang up on him in an ambush? One of the celestials slapped the table. Hanjai was stunned. His speculation was proven to be false. He looked at Shen Huang and the others with shock and suspicion. Then he discovered the 2 factions vaguely forming in the conference room. Realizing what was going on, he lowered his head and said, My master is indeed no longer among us, but the murderer never revealed himself. I reversed time and space, but only saw a few green lights. I didn't get to see the murderer. Green lights. Everybody was dazed. They all looked at Su Ping. When Hai Huang quit the astral nexus, Su Ping had waved a hand and released 3 green sword auras. Were the green lights that Han Jai mentioned the sword auras that Su Ping released back then? The 3 sword auras killed Hai Huang, even though they were launched from the astral nexus. They found it absurd and unbelievable. However, it was Hai Huang's disciple who told them about the situation. He couldn't be lying. Hanjai found the silent conference room weird. However, being the late Hai Huang's disciple, he had to demand an explanation for the sake of his master. Shen Huang, was my master really killed by you? Although his master had died and there was no one backing him, he knew it was pointless to win sympathy by showing weakness. All the experts present had made names for themselves by fighting their way out of oceans of blood. Counting on their mercy was even more unreliable than counting on himself rising to the celestial state all of a sudden. Noticing his determined look, Shen Huang knew that he had mustered all his courage to ask that question. He replied calmly, I didn't kill him. Your master offended Xiao Su, so he killed him. Xiao Su. Hanjai was stunned. He had never heard about that celestial before. I was the one who killed your master. I can send you off to join him if you disobey, said Su Ping directly, with bloody cruelty. He looked around and said, I killed him just to set an example, so that you know how easy it is for me to kill you. Arguing with you is just a waste of time. This is my last warning. In 10 days, mobilize all your forces and move to the Celestial Court to establish a defense line and resist the worms together. If you can't make it by then, you won't have to anymore. Chapter 1358, Food Crisis 1. It was done just to make him an example for everybody else. Everyone was shocked by Su Ping's intimidating and blunt declaration. Su Ping only killed Hai Huang to threaten us. They suddenly felt that Hai Huang didn't deserve to die. However, on second thought, they probably would have tried to establish dominance too if it were them. Hai Huang, being the rebel, was undoubtedly a suitable choice. Han Jai's eyes were wide as saucers when he heard that, overwhelmed by disbelief. Master was killed just to threaten others. To think that a celestial expert had died such a worthless death. He felt miserable. The whole thing was absurd to him. Also, he was terrified of Su Ping. After that, Su Ping looked at the silent conference room and said coldly again, Who else has got a problem? Everybody looked at each other in bewilderment. They were still shaken by how Su Ping killed Hai Huang. None of them dared to speak recklessly. The celestial experts who had previously acted angrily were at the moment showing normal expressions. Even their eyes glittered. It was as if they had never been enraged. If you have a problem, just say it. If you don't, do as I say. Since you're here, my master, Kai Huo and Su Kong will make arrangements for you. You can discuss matters with us, but we'll have the final say. Understand, said Su Ping. Everybody felt gloomy. One of the Celestials said, Aren't 10 days a little bit hasty? We are a huge star zone with countless planets and solar systems. We can't leave anyone behind. It'll take more than 10 people to evacuate them all. It'll certainly take much longer if they are to travel on their own. But who says you're just going to stand by and watch? Su Ping looked at them coldly. Considering your capabilities, it shouldn't be hard to concentrate the people in your star zone and help them migrate here, right? The small world of an ascendant is already enough to accommodate the population of a planet. I didn't ask you to move all the habitable planets here. But if that's the case, there will be people unwilling to come. After all, many people's assets are in real estate back on their planets, said someone in a low voice. Su Ping chuckled and said, You're talking about assets in a moment like this. Everything will be reshuffled after the catastrophe, including the rigid social classes on those planets. Try to compensate for those assets. You've made enough profits before. Isn't it time to give something back? Also, you must ensure that everybody in your star zone is safely evacuated. If I find out that you abandon large groups of ordinary people and only keep the elites, you will certainly regret it. Everybody looked somber after hearing Su Ping's threat. A celestial said, Those useless people should be abandoned at times like this. Food will be a major problem for us if they all move here. We are indeed able to make stuff out of nothing with laws, but that will consume our power. It's not like we can produce food for them like cows every day. Even if we're willing, we won't be able to make enough food for such a population. Famine will strike. Indeed, that's truly going to be a problem. The other Celestials nodded in agreement. All of them had tacitly accepted Su Ping's demand to join forces in 10 days. It was a foregone conclusion in any case. Nobody was willing to take the risk. If Su Ping could kill Hai Huang, he could naturally kill them too. In particular, Su Ping was so arrogant that they didn't feel important or rare in his eyes. It seemed that he didn't need them at all. We have food. It's possible to turn those worms into our food, said Su Ping with a frown. The worms we've hunted are not enough. Besides, their bodies aren't edible, more so if you're trying to feed the ordinary people, said one of them. Shen Huang and Kai Huo also frowned. So far, they had been considering how to establish the alliance. Since everybody had accepted it under Su Ping's threat, they had to consider the real problems after the alliance was established. Food was definitely the primary topic. All of them found it challenging. Without sacrificing some civilians, Since a lot of soil and fertile planets would be abandoned, it would be impossible to sustain all the population of the universe with the local food produced by the celestial court. Su Ping suggested his idea: we can change the worms' bodies with laws and make them edible. However, it'll be quite troublesome. He, too, knew that food and resources were among the greatest problems during war. However, it was inevitable. Such problems wouldn't go away even if they were to fight separately. It was all because every star zone would shrink their defense lines, abandoning a huge amount of territory and planets. By then, they would have to cope with food shortages. Since the population would be concentrated in one spot, the problem would take place even sooner. However, the good thing about the concentration was that the sacrifices would be reduced, and the odds of resisting the worms would be higher. This is a good idea. However, even the normal ascendants may not be able to transform the bodies. We'll have to do it ourselves. Transforming with laws should be easier than making food out of nothing. We can't enter the battlefield because of the alien hiding among the worms, but we can't let the guys who are weaker than us to protect us either. We must do something. Kai Huo agreed with Su Ping. Chapter 1359, Food Crisis 2. After a moment of silence, Shen Huang said, I've already done some calculations. Considering the fertile planets and food storage we have in the celestial court, it would only be possible to sustain all the star zones' population for 120 years. But if we transform the worm bodies, or the meteors, or the desolate planets, we won't be short of food in the next 300 years, considering our efficiency. Everyone became thoughtful upon hearing what Shen Huang said. 300 years was a long time for ordinary people, but it was just a blink for them. Will the war end in 300 years? Whispered someone, looking at Su Ping. Su Ping didn't know the answer. After all, the alien race behind the worms seemed to carry a lot of secrets and was never willing to take action. No one was sure what they were afraid of. Birth rates will definitely plummet during the catastrophe. The population will probably shrink by half in 300 years. The 300 years worth of food might actually last for 500 years, said Su Kong. Shen Huang looked at her and slightly shook his head. I've already taken that into account. The 300-year span is taking the birthing drop into consideration. Su Kong slightly changed her expression, not expecting the situation to be as dire. Nobody was confident of finishing off the worms in 300 years. After all, none of the Celestials dared to openly take action. Judging by the reconnaissance, the worms came from a place beyond the universe. They had no way of knowing how many more would appear. Just hang in there. I'll think of a solution for the food problem, said Su Ping. Everybody immediately turned to look at Su Ping. They all knew that this young man, who had appeared out of nowhere, was the bearer of great secrets. What are you going to do? Probed one of the Celestials. He didn't sound as angry as before, as he feared he would infuriate the young man. Su Ping said indifferently, all in all, I'll think of a way. I'm not joking, just carry out your duties. If you have more problems, let's discuss them. If not, the meeting is over. Hurry with your preparations to join forces with us. Nobody else dared to ask further, seeing that Su Ping wasn't willing to spend more time there. Based on his attitude, they didn't think he was lying. Yes, his arrogant attitude chafed them, but also made them think that Su Ping was too proud to lie to them. They were rather reassured by Su Ping's answers. Some people were vipers and others were tigers. Su Ping was clearly one of the latter. He was ferocious, but he never played dirty. They found that quite relieving. Now that Su Ping wanted to leave, Shen Huang instantly said, It's settled then. The Celestial Court welcomes you. All of you will be seen as brothers, now that we'll fight together. Although we had some grudges, I hope that we'll stick together and take care of the worms so that we may regain our freedom. Everybody was silent, choosing not to reply after his nice speech. We'll talk about the other matter later and invite specialists to join us. Although we are Celestials, we might not be the most knowledgeable in every aspect, said Shen Huang. Everybody nodded. What happened that day had a major impact on them, and they needed time to digest everything. Han Jai felt stunned after noticing their reaction. His heart was filled with sorrow. His master died. However, the whole thing seemed to have been settled after only a few simple words. Indeed, he became an example to the others, but he was dead. Hanjai found it absurd and hilarious that his master had died that easily. You can go too. You may get a copy of the meeting's footage. We'll figure out a way to help you with the evacuation, Shen Huang said to Hanjai. Hanjai's heart was bitter. He lowered his head in frustration. Very soon the meeting was over. Everybody logged off. Su Ping, Shen Huang, and the others left the astral nexus. They woke up in Shen Huang's room. Kai-Hu saw that Su Ping opened his eyes and heaved a sigh. Brother Su, you are truly awesome. I had already seen that when you killed the Saint King, but how did you kill Hai Huang remotely? Are you truly not a universe dominator? Su Kang also gazed at Su Ping with her beautiful eyes, filled with curiosity. I really am not, but I'm halfway there. If your understanding of the great Tao is deep enough, you'll be able to do the same. It's nothing surprising, said Su Ping. Time and space in this universe can be folded and even overlapped. What seems to be distances away might be in arm's reach. I don't understand. Kai-Hu scratched his head. Shen Huang had many conflicting feelings. What Su Ping said terrified him. How long has it been? Su Ping is already halfway to the universe dominator stage. Given enough time, wouldn't Su Ping surely become a universe dominator? Su Kang noticed it too. She looked at Su Ping with even more curiosity in her eyes. The guy had mysteriously distinguished himself out of the blue. Even though she was a celestial herself, she was still quite interested in him. However, she knew she wasn't qualified to touch upon those secrets. I heard that one of the clerks in your store is a celestial. Is that right? Asked Su Kang all of a sudden. Su Ping felt dazed for a moment, then nodded. Yes, but she doesn't like showing up in public. Is being a clerk not showing up in public? Su Kang thought to herself. She could only take his words at face value, since the woman didn't like arguing with others. We can let her take care of the Black Desolation Star Zone. Su Ping released Kaophalet from the universe of chaos. What Shen Huang said caught his attention. Master, you don't have to go there in person. It'll be bad if you run into the alien on your way. Kaophalet had just gotten out of confinement and didn't quite realize what was going on. However, she knew what Su Ping meant based on what she managed to hear. She was quite angry. Would it be good if she ran into that alien? However, being a prisoner, there was nothing she could do except glare at her captor silently. That'll be for the best. Shen Huang glanced at the saint heir from the planet of origin and said to Su Ping, she inherited the ancient corpse's legacy. Can you control her? Isn't there a chance that she'll suddenly absorb all the legacy after an epiphany and reach the top cultivation height the ancient expert had when he was alive? Kaophalet almost rolled her eyes in fury after hearing that conjecture. Both the master and disciple pair were truly cunning to even take that into consideration. They really weren't giving her any chance to make a comeback. No, it's not that easy to digest the legacy of a universe dominator. Besides, her talent is mediocre at best. I will reach that height before she does. I would still be able to suppress her even if she becomes a universe dominator, said Su Ping. Kaophalet almost vomited blood. My talent is mediocre. It was the first time anyone had said that about her in her entire life. It was almost ridiculous. However, just as she was about to refute, Tesh fell silent again after looking at Su Ping. She was indeed nothing remarkable when compared to him. The latter didn't say that to humiliate her. He was only using the godly princes and princesses and the Tao children of the Heaven Path Institute as a benchmark. Compared to them, she was truly mediocre. Even the Tao child candidates could have taken turns to beat her silly. Shen Huang and the others were amused and somehow sympathetic when they saw how frustrated Kaophalet was, even though she was an enemy. I'm returning to my store. Master, please let me know if anything happens, said Su Ping. Okay. After saying goodbye, Su Ping took Kaophalet back to his store. Business was done for the day at that moment, so the door was closed. Su Ping greeted Tang Ruyan, Joanna, and the others, then led Kaophalet to the pet room. What are you going to do? Kea Follett gave Su Ping a wary look. She knew that the guy didn't know the first thing about gentleness. Whatever he was planning was not something good. Enslave you, said Su Ping. Kea Follett was rather stunned. Do you have to be so blunt about it? Very soon she saw a dark light appearing on Su Ping's fingertips. He drew a strange rune in midair, right before her eyes. A strange power was spread out as the rune gradually took shape. Kea Follett felt rather dizzy, as if her consciousness was about to be sucked into the rune. Chapter 1360, Personality Fashioning 1. What's this? Kea Follett's heart felt tight. Su Ping's bluntness belied an absolute confidence. With everything coming to that point, she would rather not wait and die, even though she knew she couldn't beat him. While talking, she suddenly attacked. A terrifying aura burst out. A silver pattern appeared on her forehead as she punched Su Ping fiercely. There was a bam. Su Ping countered her palm as if knowing she would try a sneak attack, collapsing all the energy concentrated in her palm. Then, he raised his hand and pressed the curse onto her head. Be quiet. Su Ping's voice was steady and indifferent. Kea Follett said angrily, You're despicable. I defeated you fair and square. How is that despicable? Su Ping asked back, while sending the curse's power into her consciousness. Kea Follett instantly felt that a dark power was invading her brain. She instantly activated a secret technique in an attempt to disperse the power. However, she felt like a drunkard the moment she thought of that. Infinite information surged into her head. Countless pictures and episodes appeared. They were such a mess that she felt her brain was being corrupted. Soon after she discovered that her mind was frozen, she actually couldn't feel her body anymore. The dark aura quickly faded away, leaving nothing but darkness and silence around her. She tried again, quickly performing a soul technique, only to discover that she couldn't feel any power. Her heart instantly sank. She knew that she had probably been struck. Bastard, let me out, Kea Follett roared furiously. There was no response from the silent darkness, not even a single echo. After cursing for a while, she even felt more panicked and sorrowful than before. She had just inherited the universe dominator's legacy and had yet to grow, and she was already enslaved. It was humiliating. Let me out, I'm willing to submit to you, Kea Follett gnashed her teeth. I'm begging you. In the quiet darkness, a beam of light appeared out of nowhere. The light gradually formed a vortex which looked like a channel to the outside world. However, Kea Follett couldn't sense any way out. She only saw Su Ping through the hole. Only because you're begging me, I'll give you a chance. Even if you suddenly die someday, you should know why. What Su Ping said chilled her to the bone. Soon after, Kea Follett found that the darkness around her was gone. Not only could she see Su Ping, but she could also see the environment and herself. It was like observing herself as a third party. She then found that her face was absolutely numb. While observing with shock and suspicion, she regained her expression and her eyes were shining again. It was as if an empty shell had been filled with a soul. Master. The next moment, Kea Follett felt frightened. She saw as her body flashed a sweet smile and bowed at Su Ping, then she spoke in the most obedient manner. What did you do to my body? Kea Follett said with a mix of anger and fear. Su Ping didn't move his mouth, but his voice echoed in her ears. Nothing. I simply isolated your consciousness and built another soul based on your memories, which I edited a little bit. It seems to be working well. Why you're the devil? Kea Follett was shocked and infuriated. She didn't know how to describe that young man. He was like a devil straight from hell. If it's impossible to save the world by acting as a god, I must carry out the executions as the devil. Su Ping's voice echoed in her mind, then she saw him smile. You cannot do this, Kea Follett roared furiously. But Su Ping's voice wasn't heard again. Back in the pet room, Su Ping looked at the absolutely obedient Kea Follett and felt more or less regretful. Although he had made an altered copy of her soul and controlled her, he didn't acquire the memory of Kea Follett's legacy. Otherwise, there would be a chance that the personality he developed could inherit the legacy and become a god warrior someday. The War Emperor's legacy will probably be lost. What a shame. His dead body retained his fighting will, that's why it mauled that alien. It might not even be a coincidence that the body was floating near the crack. It's possible that the body noticed the crack and moved there to block it. Unbelievable as it might sound, Su Ping thought that was the most likely reason. It was hard to imagine what a great and stubborn hero the War Emperor was when he was alive. It wasn't the first of such men that Su Ping had seen. The Twilight Deity King, Green Lady's master, was the same. Even though he died, he blocked a hole using his own body. Back then, Su Ping was too weak to see what was in the hole. No one knew if it was the deeper universe or a crack to another world. Either way, that kind of stubbornness suggested how fierce the great war that once broke out had been. While focusing his attention, Su Ping said to the respectful Kaophalet, "You'll follow my master for the next couple of days and do whatever he asks." "Yes, master," said Kaophalet obediently. Then she said goodbye to him and went to Shen Huang's building. Su Ping simply talked to his master telepathically, letting him know of the situation. That Kaophalet had been enslaved by him, and he could freely order her about. Chapter 1361, Personality Fashioning 2. Shen Huang saw Kaophalet at the door, only to discover that she looked completely different from her past self. There was less of the Saint Heir's arrogance in her eyes, and more of a casual and indifferent poise. She constantly wore a fake smile, which seemed to hide coldness and cruelty underneath. The Saint Heir seems to have turned into a different person. Shen Huang's observation was keen. He didn't know how Su Ping had done it, but taming the Saint Heir in such a short amount of time was terrifying. He talked to the Saint Heir for a while, and found that she was indeed vastly different from before. Inside the shop, Su Ping talked to Joanna for a while, and then left for the demigod burial with the pets that required professional training. His main purpose for the trip was to give the 4 superior gods a reply. He also had other thoughts in mind. He then teleported to the demigod burial and went to a forbidden place first, which was extremely dangerous, home to many ferocious ascendant beasts. All the celestial state beasts that used to live there had already been cleared by him and the superior gods. The place had become much less threatening, but it was still a dangerous place in the eyes of adventurers. Su Ping summoned the lightning rat too, and had it train and fight along with the inferno dragon and the others. The lightning rat had not entered Su Ping's cultivation sites ever since Su Yanying died. It was far weaker than the dark dragon hound and the rest, but it was still very strong at its level. Having trained a few times in the Golden Crow world and the Archean divinity, the little fellow was attaining the combat ability of a Star Lord. Su Ping imparted the great Tao he had comprehended through their bond, helping the little one to quickly improve. By then, it had condensed 5 small worlds. While seated on the mountaintop, Su Ping watched the inferno dragon and the lightning rat fight in forests and swamps, turning that forbidden place upside down. With a few timid pets from his customers, they chased after the ferocious ascendant beasts. He would immediately resurrect them whenever they got accidentally killed. A middle-rank cultivation site like the demigod burial was no longer a challenge for Su Ping at the moment. Even if the strongest forces here were gathered, he could finish them off with ease. How I missed the first time I went to the Thunder Cloud realm. Su Ping ate snacks with his back against a rock, watching the lightning rat fight fiercely against an ascendant beast. His feelings were somewhat at odds. Back then he was forced to stimulate the lightning rat with a secret technique, all to spur its fighting will. However, it now acted like a dog on the loose, attacking any beast in sight, regardless of level. It didn't seem to know the meaning of death. Time flew. The lightning rat, which used to be a cowardly creature that needed to be forced to fight, had been turned into a crazy beast after the death of its 2 previous masters. Su Ping watched in silence. He lowered his eyes and almost saw that short and bare figure floating in the woods. Little skeleton. Su Ping unconsciously raised a hand, hopping to touch those bare bones, but his hand stopped moving halfway. Several days later, they left that dangerous place and went to the superior temple. He spoke to the superior gods telepathically and soon met them in person. Mr. Su. All four of them were surprised to see him. They had received Su Ping's telepathic message right in their residences without any warning. It was terrifying. Once they saw him again, they noticed how he was even more horrifying than before. They could not see him through anymore. All their pores were involuntarily closed off and compressed, instinctively ready for battle. "I've asked about your homecoming," said Su Ping in a straightforward manner. "Even the god emperors are unable to do that. I can only ask the ancestral gods for help." Ancestral gods. They looked at each other in bewilderment. That was a term from a distant past. According to their memories, they were the real ultimate legends of the Archean divinity. "My current identity is not enough to ask the ancestral gods for help. So, there is only one way for you to return to your home, which is to pack everybody and have them enter your universes. After that, you can enter my universe and I'll take you there," said Su Ping as he looked at the four of them. The gods were stunned. That was the same proposal from before. None of them were willing since it was too risky. "Is there no other way?" Heather couldn't help but ask. Su Ping glanced at her and slightly shook his head. "You can take your time to think. Even if you want to leave, it'll take some time to gather and transport many people. If you prefer waiting, I can personally haul your world to where it belongs when I become an ancestral god." When you become an ancestral god. The four of them looked at Su Ping with widened eyes. Even though they weren't as strong as their old selves when leaving the Archean divinity, every god in their homeland knew how powerful ancestral gods were. "That's right," Su Ping nodded. One of them couldn't help but ask, "Then, what's your current level?" Su Ping was open about it. "In terms of level, I'm not as high as you, but if you only focus on combat ability, I should be able to kill you instantly. Once I condense my Tao heart, I will become an emperor and aim for the next level. I don't know how long it'll. After all, I'm still trying to condense my Tao heart." Condense your Tao heart, become an emperor. All of them gazed at Su Ping. In the world of gods, the only emperors were god emperors. God emperors were exactly a realm above them. After a moment of silence, they glanced at each other and felt that the situation was surreal. A while back they could have easily killed him. However, the tables had turned in the blink of an eye, since Su Ping claimed he could kill them instantly. The role reversal came so fast that they couldn't get used to it yet. There was nothing but silence. All five of them stood there in silence. Su Ping stared at them quietly, waiting for them to digest the information. After a long time passed, Chevalolo said, "If possible, we'd like to choose the second option." "The second?" Su Ping looked at him in surprise. Heather said with a conflicted expression, "Although we're longing to get back home, we've lived in this place for too long. This is our home too." "That's right. If we only take the people away, the cities we've established will be left as ruins. That would be very sad," said Ebor. Su Ping glanced at them, knowing it was their collective decision after they discussed amongst themselves. "Maybe you'll have to wait for a long time then," said Su Ping. "That's all right," Chevalolo said with a smile. "If we're finally done with waiting, we can always choose the first option. We've waited for 1,000,000 years already. Mr. Su, you've reached your current height in only a few hundred years. I believe that you have the potential to rise to the top, because you're by far the most unusual genius we have ever seen." Chapter 1362, Unification of the Universe 1. Looking at their eyes, Su Ping understood that they were unwilling to give up the land. After all, it was also home to countless gods. They couldn't just leave it behind. "Now that you've reached a decision, I'll try not to keep you waiting too long," said Su Ping. "Mr. Su, really, don't feel pressured by this. We actually enjoy our life here. Especially when we thought that we would soon leave, it suddenly occurred to us that there are many places we haven't appreciated yet," said Chevalolo. Ebor nodded. "That's right. I plan to travel the world again as an ordinary god. Maybe it will take several hundred years, maybe several thousand. I want to take a good look at this place." Su Ping could sympathize with them. He nodded and said, If you choose to stay, there's something I would like to request. Mr. Su, do speak. I need a large batch of food. If conditions allow, I hope that you can ask the local residents to plant crops for me. The more, the better, said Su Ping. He had planned to seek help from the Heaven Path Institute, or the Master of the Red Dome Realm. Considering his deputy master identity, it wouldn't be hard for him to task a batch of people to grow food. Food, all four of them were stunned. That was obviously the last thing they expected Su Ping to ask for. To them, food was a strange and distant word. After all, they no longer needed any. They did eat on occasion, but only to satisfy their senses. They were certainly uninterested in normal food and only indulged in delicious cuisine. Yes, food for humans, Su Ping nodded. You need it for your people, Mr. Su, asked Chevalier. Su Ping shook his head. Not my people, but my compatriots. We're now faced with a war and we might be short of food. Got it. Heather looked at Su Ping in surprise and asked, Mr. Su, considering your strength, there are wars that you can't win. Of course. Su Ping answered without thinking. Even if I become an ancestral god, there will be wars I can't win. Although strength is the only thing that matters, there are things that you can't accomplish on your own. His own words somehow led him to a realization, and then vaguely understood how to find his Tao heart. All four gods felt puzzled, as they couldn't understand what Su Ping told them. A war that not even an ancestral god can win. Is the other party an ancestral god too? In their eyes, when someone was strong enough, they could single-handedly suppress an entire clan. That was the case in the Archean divinity. The birth of an ancestral god could promote an ordinary clan to become a high-ranked clan. Clans without ancestral gods had to back off in front of a high-ranked clan. After all, such existences could easily destroy any clan if they ever chose to take action. That was absolute strength. If you need it, Mr. Su, we'll definitely do our best. Growing food is easy for us. You killed the ultimate beasts in forbidden places a while back. Now those places have shrunk in size. There are a lot of empty areas to grow food, said Chevalier. Su Ping nodded. I'll entrust the matter to you then, the more food the better. Okay. All of them nodded. Su Ping didn't stay for much longer. He said his goodbyes and left that world. He returned to the store and placed the trained pets in the pet room. Then, he picked another batch of creatures and left for a different cultivation site. Time flew. Su Ping traveled to many cultivation sites. While training his customers' pets, he also trained the lightning rat, the inferno dragon, and the others. Even though they were already strong, capable of fighting celestials except for the struggling lightning rat, Su Ping didn't allow them to relax. He continued with the harsh training, as he knew that a war would very likely break out, and there was the alien among the worms. Middle-rank cultivation sites were no longer challenging to his pets. He could only choose the high-rank ones. Aside from the Archean divinity and the chaotic realm of the undead, there were a dozen more sites of high rank. They were places such as the realm of bleak dragons, the remains of ancestral humans, the realm of magic beasts, and so on. Su Ping discovered that the enemies in those high-ranked sites were as strong as those found in the Archean divinity. In the realm of bleak dragons, for instance, they found all kinds of dragons. Many of them were in the celestial state. In the remains of ancestral humans, there was nothing but giants who were hundreds of meters tall. The trees and mountains were extremely tall too. Su Ping had the feeling that he had been miniaturized to 1,000 of his original size. Even a leaf was as massive as a cloud. Most giants, named ancestral humans, were as strong as cultivators of celestial level. Oddly enough, they didn't cultivate any small universe. Their bodies were terrifyingly sturdy. Compared to these worlds, the place I live in is only a middle-rank cultivation site at best. However, considering all the middle-rank cultivation sites, it is definitely one of the best. Su Ping considered the level of his universe and found it inferior. How far away those cultivation sites were from his universe was a mystery. Their experts were certainly capable of tearing apart his universe. If they ever found it, The invasion of any ancestral god would be an absolute disaster. However, our universe has never been invaded in ages. It's like Earth in the past, in the middle of a vast universe, but it never encountered an interstellar civilization, like an isolated village in the mountains. Su Ping's eyes glittered. Maybe, once he became an ancestral god and could travel beyond the universe, he would know what it was like out there. He went to those cultivation sites and led his pets to fight and defeat all kinds of celestial state creatures, while also making a lot of friends on the way. Getting to know those strangers gave Su Ping an amazing feeling. Although they were from different races and had different habits, they were very similar in certain aspects. It was quite marvelous and lovely to share similarities with a stranger from a completely different race. All creatures were different. Maybe the differences between creatures were not meant for them to reject each other, but to understand and appreciate one another. Su Ping's heart was further polished after returning from his outing. On the 8th day, the first celestial expert arrived in the celestial court with his star zone's residents and army. Shen Huang and Kai Huo welcomed the new arrivals. More celestials experts teleported over on their spacecraft carrier in the following 2 days. Far in the Black Desolation star zone, Follett had been sent to help them gather their forces. All opposition and dissidence were suppressed by her. The universe was gradually unifying and gathering. In an unknown place in deep space, there was an ancient gate which was slowly opening. Chapter 1363, Old Friend 1. Behind that ancient gate, a lofty yet vague shadow was slowly manifested. The shadow was as high and mighty as a god. It stood there, seemingly becoming the center of the universe, enshrouded in an inexplicable aura. In such a weak universe, someone said in a whisper, and the void trembled violently. The voice alone had almost caused the nearby space to collapse. A purely dark figure appeared and knelt in front of the gate. "I see." The shadow beyond the gate seemed to have received the message and whispered, "Keep investigating. Don't alarm anyone." After that, the shadow gradually dispersed, along with the gate. Exactly at that moment, something unusual happened in the trembling universe. It was twisting quickly. Hideous arms and heads surged from a crack, seemingly creatures from the deep sea. They roared and charged at the kneeling dark figure. The latter snorted and turned into a streak of light, vanishing into nothingness. All the scary arms and heads came to a halt after losing their target. However, the crack kept wiggling slowly, as if it were healing. In the celestial court, the place was like a gigantic star, illuminating the area within several light years. Many spacecraft carriers were slowly flying out of the teleportation points at the border of the celestial court, which accommodated countless soldiers and civilians. Some tycoons were currently standing on the observation tower at the top of a spacecraft carrier and stared at the golden celestial court through the transparent protective shield. There were 12 star zones in the universe, but most people would never have the chance to set foot in another star zone in their entire lives. Not just crossing star zones, even crossing galaxies was extremely rare. Only the rich and energetic could afford it. The civilians were hiding in the cabins at the bottom of the spacecraft. Their faces, large and small, filled up the narrow windows as they gazed at that strange place with confusion and anxiety in their eyes. According to the notice of the higher-ups, they were probably going to live in that place for a very long time. That would also be the last shelter of the universe. Once those celestials moved there, Shen Huang, Kai Huo, and all the others got busy. They led the newcomers to the designated areas so that they could settle down. The defense line around the celestial court had been narrowed down to the core of the Golden Star Zone, with a radius of only several dozen light years. The place was instantly flooded with all the immigrants. Shen Huang, Kai Huo, and the others had manufactured a lot of planets in advance to accommodate the immigrants. While everybody in the celestial court was busy receiving the guests, the celestial experts were all present in the highest conference room. They hadn't met in reality for a long time. "Shen Huang, why is your command center on such a tiny planet?" Hardly had they arrived when they posed the question. However, their tone was casual, not demanding. After all, Shen Huang was too powerful. Nobody was willing to provoke a conflict with him. They would be idiots if they argued with the host in his place, just after moving there. Zio Su likes staying on this planet, so we turned it into the capital of the Celestial Court, replied Shen Huang with a smile, being open about the matter. Everybody felt dazed. The reason was quite unexpected. They thought there was something special about that place, since it was chosen as their hiding place. However, it merely turned out to be that the young man was fond of it. Shen Huang, you truly dote on Mr. Su, said a celestial expert awkwardly, addressing Su Ping in a different way. The latter didn't have a title yet. They could only call him by his name. We've come from far away. We'd like to meet this Mr. Su fellow. Will he attend today's meeting? Asked someone else. Their intent was obvious. They wanted to check firsthand how strong that arrogant upstart was, a guy from who knows where. Shen Huang saw through their plan but didn't back out. He said, Zio Su is usually very busy. I will tell him about you and your request to meet. If he's free, he will probably come. What is he busy with? Asked another celestial. Shen Huang glanced at him. Cultivation, of course. A genius cannot evolve with talent alone. Kai Huo interrupted them and spoke with an impatient tone. All right, enough chit-chat. Now that you're all here, let's talk about the future defense plans for the border. Always short-fused, he quickly became angry when he noticed that they were wasting time. What's the rush? Kai Wang, leader of the Red Shadow Star Zone, rolled eyes at him. The two were old nemesis. Although he had bowed down before the Celestial Court, he was still at loggerheads with Kai Huo. The latter narrowed his eyes and gazed at him coldly. Kai Wang raised his eyebrows but eventually looked away. That was Kai Huo's home field and he didn't want to start a conflict. After all, there was the monster backer who was able to kill Hai Huang remotely. Shen Huang waved a hand and said, Now that you're all here, ask the advisors of your star zones to attend this meeting too. We have to listen to your opinion regarding the arrangements for the defense line. Shen Huang is right. The other Celestials nodded. They were clearly happier when they found that their host wasn't a dictator. Chapter 1364, Old Friend 2. Many decisions were made and relayed for execution as the meeting proceeded. The entire Celestial Court took action to carry them out. At the same time outside of Rhea's space station, a spaceship had gone through inspection and landed on one of the planet's continents. I didn't know it would be so difficult to visit this place again. A group of people walked out of the spaceship. They looked at the familiar yet strange planet with mixed feelings. One of them teased. The legitimate owner of this planet was barely able to land on it. That had never happened in the Federation, had it? Good thing the Alliance leader's father helped. We wouldn't have been given a temporary pass without him. Requirements were truly harsh, said another with a sigh. Who can argue with you? According to the news, this is already considered as the Celestial Court's capital. It is as impregnable as the court's royal palace in the past. Ryan, didn't you say you'd ask Boss Su for this planet? Let's go there right now, another man joked. Get lost. A brawny middle-aged man pushed him away angrily. He was none other than the leader of the Ryan family, which reigned over Rhea in the past. He was also one of Su Ping's old friends and a member of the Battle Alliance. He had been unable until then to get a chance and return to the planet ever since it was pushed across the universe by Su Ping. After that, the young man became famous in the Universe Geniuses contest and rose to prominence. He was too scared to make any sort of claims anymore. After all, a planet was nothing. Being a celestial expert's disciple, Su Ping could easily receive a galaxy as a gift. At the moment, Su Ping's status was even higher than before. Ryan already considered this planet as Su Ping's possession. He wasn't intent on trying to take it back anymore. Besides, the place was his hometown. He too felt honored since it became so prosperous thanks to the boy. He had benefited a lot from his connection to Su Ping. Many secondary forces in the universe had gotten in touch, hoping to get to know Su Ping through them and gain something out of it. The tall and intimidating middle-aged man said in the crowd, "Stop spouting nonsense. Mr. Su is no longer the junior he used to be. According to what I've heard from some ascendant cultivators, Mr. Su actually killed a celestial. It's said that he's already a new celestial state master. It's just that it hasn't been made official. The ceremony was postponed due to the current turmoil in the universe. After all, the ceremony is for the entire universe to watch. There's no time and energy to do that right now. He killed a celestial state expert." All of them had heard about Su Ping's feats while traveling on the spaceship. However, hearing those words again gave them such a thrill their hearts were pounding. "I wonder if he has the time to meet us right now," said another member, sighing. However, there was neither jealousy nor disappointment in his voice. Su Ping was already so high above them that they could only look up to him. A girl interrupted everybody and said, "We're about to serve in the army. Let's go visit him." "You're the boss, Miss Shenner. Let's go there and take a look." Everybody agreed. They immediately took a smaller shuttle and flew to one of the planet's stations. Then, they traveled all the way to Wafet. Ryan couldn't help but rub his eyes as he watched from the spaceship at the current Wafet city. The place had been completely transformed. Many lofty buildings had risen to scrape the sky. The city had expanded dozens of times over and absorbed many of the neighboring cities, becoming a super metropolis. So many powerful auras. Xingyu Shenner's senses were keen. She wore a solemn expression. There were powerful ascendant state auras as strong as her father's everywhere she probed in the city. "Why do I get the feeling that all the people here are battle pet warriors?" The others were feeling the same. They didn't see many of the ordinary people. Ryan said, "The ordinary people probably went elsewhere. Moving away is very tempting when experts are willing to pay." Everybody understood the logic. Now that all the strong people had been attracted to that place, it was pointless for ordinary folk to stay around. Might as well move to another place where they could enjoy their lives peacefully. Very soon, they found the most prosperous street in the center of the city. A warning sounded in the spaceship right then. Flying was not allowed in Wafet's inner city. They instantly parked the spaceship in the outskirts and took a car to the inner city. Then, after half a day, they finally made it to a crowded pet store. "This is the place. We have to wait in line." "Of course. We're not here to train pets just to see an old friend. I don't think we have to wait in line. Let's talk to the receptionist." They squeezed forward through the crowd. Xingyu Shenner looked around and climbed the stairs, ignoring the anger in the eyes of customers around her. She asked the girl at the door, "Is this Su Ping's store? We're his friends." Tang Ruyan looked at the girl and mumbled to herself, "Friends? Did Su Ping have any friends? Even if he has any, why does it have to be such a cute girl?" "Aku." In the store, Su Ping, who had just returned from a cultivation site, couldn't help but sneeze. He rubbed his nose. "Who's missing me?" At the door, Xingyu Shenner explained, "We'll only be here for a moment. We just came here to say hi." "Just wait then. I'll ask him when he returns." Tang Ruyan glanced at the people behind the girl. She didn't think the girl was lying. Considering how everything had developed to that point, no one would dare to lie there. She didn't think that group of people were bold enough for it. "Thank you." Tang Ruyan detected Su Ping's aura in the store. She instantly said something to those people and entered. Once she saw him, she relayed the message and then rolled her eyes at him. "Friends." Su Ping was rather surprised. He spread out his senses and immediately saw the people by the door. He was in a trance as he wasn't expecting to see them. It seemed to have been a long time. However, Su Ping discovered that they had hardly changed. He instantly went to the door and smiled. "What brings you here?" Everybody was stunned for a moment when seeing him walk out of the store, feeling that they didn't know him anymore. Xingyu Shenner was dazed for a moment. She didn't know what to say, so she went for the obvious. "You really were here." "Come on in," Su Ping said as he invited them to the store. All of them followed, instantly feeling flattered. Many times they had pictured how their reunion would be, but now they found it inappropriate to say what they had in mind when they did meet. Is this the intimidation you attain after killing a celestial? Everybody thought about this and gave Su Ping prudent looks. They were both eager and nervous when they talked about the latter on the spaceship, but now only the nervousness remained. Are you here to travel around? Su Ping asked with a smile, trying to lighten up the mood. Well, Xingyu Shenner felt that her mind was moving in a rather rigid manner. She had seen that a lot of Ascendant State customers were queuing in Su Ping's store. All of them were as strong as her father. The man himself felt it more vividly. He noticed the horrifying aura from the beautiful blonde behind the counter the moment he entered. Even though she was making an effort to conceal it, he could still tell that it was impossible to overlook her. Is she a celestial too? His heart shivered. He had the privilege of meeting a celestial expert up close once. The feeling was exactly the same back then. We're about to serve in the army. We hope to see you before we go, said Xingyu Shenner after a long time hesitating. There were many words she wanted to say, but she couldn't say them at the moment. She even felt the urge to immediately say goodbye and leave. Serve in the army, Su Ping was slightly dazed. He glanced at them, instantly being reminded of the worm tide. He said with a heavy heart, I can help in relieving you of your duties. You can find a planet and cultivate there. Making such an arrangement was but a simple matter for him. Xingyu Shenner felt dazed for a moment. She suddenly had a familiar feeling and her nervousness faded. With a smile on her face, she said, that won't be necessary. Serving in the army is our responsibility. Right now, everybody is obligated to resist the worms, being such a dangerous moment. We are battle pet warriors. How can we hide behind defense lines like the ordinary people? Chapter 1365, Transcending the Tribulation 1. Su Ping was slightly surprised. Seeing her determined look, he looked at the others behind her, only to see confidence with a touch of awkwardness in their eyes. Su Ping instantly realized what they thought. This worm tide is very dangerous. It's possible that you'll never come back. Have you really thought it through? Asked Su Ping. Xingyu Shenner chuckled. Don't underestimate us. Maybe the worm tide will be averted much quicker with our intervention. She intentionally spoke in an optimistic and relieving manner. However, Su Ping knew that no Star Lords were that naive. We've already left our last words for family and friends. We won't regret it even if we die in battle, said someone in the crowd. That's right, our descendants are still waiting for us. We can't ask others to protect our children, can we? Another chimed in. Su Ping glanced at them, only to find that all were unremarkable. Who would have thought that they would be willing to step up in that time of crisis? In that case, let me give you a little something, said Su Ping. Stay here for one more day. I'll give you some pets tomorrow. We appreciate your kindness, but our assignments are going to be very dangerous. It's best not to let pets suffer along with us, said Xingyu Shenner, shaking her head. Su Ping shook his own head and said, I insist that you accept them, or I won't feel at ease. After such words, everyone exchanged looks and could only accept it. The next day, they went to Su Ping's store again. After waiting for half an hour, Su Ping returned from a cultivation site and saw that they were waiting inside. He instantly took them to the test room. Each of you will pick one of these little guys. Su Ping summoned a batch of pets and lined them up in the test room. Everybody was astounded. Are they really little guys? All of those beasts were in the ascendant state. They had extremely ferocious looks. Some were scary, while others were gloomy and brutal. All of them were compelled to back off, even wanting to escape the room. Some of the guys present swallowed and even trembled. They were still in the star state. How could they withstand the pressure of that many brutal ascendant pets? You! Xingyu Shenner was stunned for a long time before she slowly turned around and looked at Su Ping. Are you giving them to me? I'm not really giving them to you. I'm actually selling them, said Su Ping. But their prices are quite affordable to you. It kind of ruined the atmosphere when he said that he was selling them, but he couldn't break the store's rules. After all, the pets caught in cultivation sites couldn't be taken away without being properly sold. He didn't have permission to give them away. Everybody simply thought that he was doing it so they wouldn't reject the offer. After all, he did ask them to wait another day to give them something. Would he really be selling those pets? Besides, even if those ascendant creatures were sold in the market, their prices would be astronomical, even for ascendant cultivators, let alone star lords. They would be impossible to afford. Su Ping immediately told them the prices, and everyone took it as confirmation that the former was only doing that because he feared they would be reluctant to accept such a great favor. We appreciate your kindness, but all those pets are in the ascendant state. My father can take one. As for the rest, we wouldn't dare use them even if we took any. What if they attack us? Xingyu Shener said to Su Ping after some hesitation. The others also looked away and nodded. They were very interested in those pets, but they knew it would be difficult to use them. Even the star lords of many major families would think twice about having ascendant pets, because the gap between ascendants and star lords was too wide. It was easy for the pet to get out of control despite the contract's restraint. Don't worry about that. I've planted some restrictions in their souls. They would never defy you, said Su Ping. Naturally, he had foreseen this, so he persuaded those ascendant pets by making use of laws. Even the normal celestials could do that. It was certainly easy for him. You can do that. Everybody was surprised, knowing that Su Ping had no need to lie to them. You can give it a try, said Su Ping with a smile. Feel free to examine their abilities in this place. I'll feel better if you're protected by ascendant pets during your service. Everyone decided to accept after Su Ping said it that way. Noticing that the Star State cultivators in the crowd were feeling envious, Su Ping approached them and said, "If you don't mind, I'll help you condense a small world so that you'll immediately advance and become Star Lords. Help us condense a small world." Not just them, the others also looked at Su Ping in a daze. What kind of method is that? We've never heard about it before. No, we certainly don't mind. One of them was quick to react. He was astonished and thrilled. Having heard all the legends about Su Ping from Xingyu Shener's father, he already considered the young man to be a celestial state master. The abilities of such existences were beyond his imagination. He wouldn't even doubt for a moment, even if Su Ping claimed that he would turn the universe upside down. Okay. Seeing that they accepted his offer, Su Ping instantly began to impart the needed knowledge. Chapter 1366, Transcending the Tribulation 2. He chose to teach them the law of illusion and build the illusory world with it. Even though such a world wasn't too destructive, it was very useful when it came to survival. Su Ping hoped that all of them would return alive. Back in the Archean divinity, the God Emperor elders could publicly transmit their understanding of Tao. Not even celestials could do that, because their realm was merely at the threshold to the understanding of Tao. Su Ping wasn't a God Emperor yet, but he was already halfway there. Imparting knowledge wasn't difficult for him, especially when it was just about laws. After covering them in barriers, Su Ping simply transmitted the law of illusion into their minds. Meanwhile, he released a bit of chaos power to them. That bit of power surged like waves, and soon raised a storm inside their bodies, turning into the cornerstone of their small worlds. Su Ping guided them via telepathy. He was essentially controlling their bodies and helping them cultivate. Very soon, they began to emanate Star Lord auras, and their strength grew. While Xingyu Shener and the others watched in shock, the shapes of small worlds appeared behind their backs soon after. Their level of completeness increased, and they emitted a mysterious yet powerful aura. "He really did it," one of them said, obviously amazed. "Why do I feel that it's even more powerful than my small world? What an illusory aura." There was envy in some people's eyes, realizing how extraordinary those guys' small worlds were. Soon after, Su Ping canceled the barriers and said to them, "The heavenly tribulation is blocked inside this store. You will have to go through it once you leave. Still, it should be easy for you with the protection of ascendant state pets." Those people opened their eyes and couldn't help but examine themselves after hearing what Su Ping said. They were thrilled as they sensed the abundant power in their bodies. They never expected to become Star Lords so easily. The heavenly tribulation is being blocked. Everyone else was shocked again, after processing what Su Ping mentioned. Is this the power of a celestial state master? Xingyu Shener's father was just as shocked. Su Ping's methods were beyond his imagination. "Go and pick your pets," said Su Ping. Everyone snapped out of their shock, but mixed feelings remained. They knew that the gap between them and Su Ping was huge, but never did they imagine it would be as huge as that between mortals and gods. Xingyu Shener wore a complicated expression. Su Ping was merely in the star state and she could beat him easily when they first met. Still, he quickly managed to reach a height she couldn't even see. His capabilities were completely beyond her understanding. Is this what talent means? She dismissed her thoughts, knowing it was pointless to think about it. She followed her father to see the ascendant state pets and picked to her liking. The beasts crouched on the ground obediently while everybody was choosing. They looked angry, as if ready to lunge at any moment, but they were being restrained by some sort of power. Thankfully, Su Ping was right next to them. All of them were scared, but they gritted their teeth and went to see them. Soon after, someone picked a pet and completed the contract. Su Ping asked the person to freely test and command their pet there, so that they would become more intimate. Soon, earthquakes shook the test room as many secret techniques were cast, causing a large-scale destruction. However, the damage was fixed in the blink of an eye. A long time later, Su Ping led everyone out after they completed their contracts and finished testing. They walked out of the test room and were less scared of their pets. Although the pets looked ferocious, they were extremely obedient, which was a delight. "Thank you for your great help." Xingyu Shener's father cupped his hands at Su Ping gratefully. The others also rushed to express their thanks. Su Ping waved a hand and said, "We're all friends, no need to thank me. You'll be embarking on a perilous journey. I hope that you'll be careful. I'll prepare another great gift for your safe return." Someone asked curiously, "What great gift?" Su Ping smiled but didn't answer. "You'll know when you return." Xingyu Shener slapped the head of the person who asked and said angrily, "Su Ping only hopes that we can return in one piece. What more do you want?" The guy stuck out his tongue and smiled awkwardly. "I will surely bring them all back," said Xingyu Shener to Su Ping. She was both perky and serious, as if she were making a vow. Su Ping nodded and walked them out. Right after they left the store, the sky was instantly filled by clouds. The heavenly tribulation was invoked. Indeed, there's indeed a heavenly tribulation. All the new Star Lords looked up at the sky, searching for the tribulation source. Other people on the street were also astonished. The ones who summoned the tribulation flew to the sky and passed their test, attracting a lot of attention. The lightning bolts struck down. Their new ascendant pets took action and blocked all the lightning strikes. The heavenly tribulation was over. Once passing the tribulation, they landed and thanked Su Ping solemnly again. The latter stood at the door and bid them goodbye. He felt lost as he watched them leave, wondering if any of them would be missing next time he saw them. He shook his head. There were things he couldn't stop even if he were omnipotent. Each person had their own decision, their own life, and their own faith. Su Ping couldn't interfere. He returned to his store and continued exercising in cultivation sites. Time flew. In the world of magical beasts, Su Ping was sitting on a cliff, bones piled up underneath his feet. There was a commotion in the vast forest down below. The Inferno Dragon, the Lightning Rat, and the Dark Dragon Hound were hunting beasts and making a scene. He was drinking a spicy and strange liquor from a bottle made from a stomach. It was a local specialty. Next to Su Ping was a brawny, human-shaped beast. His golden eyes were glittering, with hair unkempt, like a primitive barbarian. "Brother Su, does someone as strong as you have worries too?" The magical beast spoke hoarsely. Su Ping looked at him and said, "Every living creature has worries. Come to think of it, your child was just born. I don't have anything special for you. It just so happens that I killed a chaos sorcerer not long ago. That'll be my gift for your child." The guy was a local he had befriended in that world. He was also the young master of a certain tribe, talented and strong. At the moment he was already a celestial. A chaos sorcerer. That's a great gift, said Ariado. Brother Su, your world must be very vast. It can't be as tiny as our place. Su Ping shook his head. It's not much different. The tiny place you're familiar with is only the area you're in. Beyond the surrounding ocean there are other places and more of your compatriots. However, those regions are even more dangerous. It's fine to just stay here. Is that so? Ariado became interested. Have you been to any of those places? Can you tell me? Su Ping smiled and then told him about the general situation of some places he had randomly teleported to. One of them listened and the other talked. Su Ping finished his retelling by the time the battle in the forest ended. He stood up and said, I have to go. I really envy you, Brother Su. You can travel everywhere, said Ariado. Su Ping smiled. If there's a chance, we'll be able to travel together. You can break through this universe and truly regain freedom when you reach higher levels. Ariado shook his head. My potential is running out. Maybe I'll have to rely on my child in the future. Maybe. I didn't get a chance to see your child this time. See you then, said Su Ping. Even though that world was full of brutal magical beasts, many of them had gained wisdom, such as the primitive human beings. Also, they attached great importance to lineage. They had few children, and most of them had better potential than their parents. Okay. Su Ping bid his friend goodbye, then looked at the lightning rat and his other pets, then beckoned to them and simply teleported back to his store, right in front of Ariado's eyes. Ariado was then left alone on the cliff. Maybe we will meet again in the future, Ariado mumbled. Chapter 1367, Anomaly of the Universe 1. Su Ping placed the customer's pets in nursing pens when he got back to the store. Then, he entered the lobby as he used to, only to see a lot of ascendant cultivators. Most were exhausted and even wounded. Su Ping's eyes glittered. The battle outside had been fierce. He had seen injured people in the store since a few days prior. Boss Su. Mr. Su. All those cultivators looked refreshed upon seeing him appear. They greeted him with smiles. Su Ping's feats had already spread out in the ascendant cultivator circle. Even a fair amount of Star Lords knew of him too. The Celestials of every star zone warned their disciples and subordinates not to cross him. All the rumors made Su Ping and his store all the more mysterious. As a result, this attracted a lot of ascendants, which made up for most of his recent clients, and the pets he trained were of ascendant realm. Are the worms rampant again at the border? Su Ping asked. There was an accident. Our Andri fortress was almost broken into. Fortunately, reinforcements came in time and we averted the situation, said one of the ascendant warriors with an innocent smile. Su Ping had heard a fair amount of news of the battlefront and was almost used to it. However, he did see too many injured people in recent days. When a war burst out, the ones to realize first about the situation was probably at the infirmary, aside from the command center. Be safe, there wasn't really much he could say. Then he entered the incubation room and displayed the system panel. The balance of his account had already reached an astronomical figure. It had been 3 years since the Alliance of the Universe was formed. His store flourished since then, bursting with customers every day. During those 3 years, Su Ping had spent 100 years in cultivation sites and was very close to condensing his Tao heart. The Inferno Dragon and the Dark Dragon Hound had both evolved and reached the celestial state. If not for the alien among the worms, Su Ping could have crushed the entire universe with nothing but his pets. Nothing had changed much on the surface in that 3-year span. No one knew that Su Ping had grown to such an extent. My balance is enough to upgrade the store to level 7. Once the upgrade is done, I'll be able to train celestial pets and charge more. My money-making efficiency will improve. Considering the system's ranking, I can probably accept God Emperor pets when the store reaches level 8. As for level 9, which is the maximum, maybe I can train ancestral God pets. Su Ping's eyes glittered. The system had always been unimaginably powerful. Based on his speculations, The system could very likely be as strong as the Golden Crow ancestor, if not even more terrifying. He pondered as he looked at the energy points balance for a bit longer, then decided to upgrade. The cultivation sites would be closed during the upgrade. In any case, him going to cultivation sites was no longer as effective. He was planning on making some gadgets to be used on the front lines. Although he couldn't go there, he could offer some help to aid their cause. Do you confirm going through with the upgrade? Confirmed. There are still customers in the store. The upgrade sequence will be initiated after all customers leave. The balance was deducted. Su Ping looked at the long progress tube that had just appeared and realized it would require 100 times more energy to upgrade his store to level 8. However, after the upgrade is complete, I'll be able to train celestial state pets, and my money-making speed won't be greatly impacted. I should be able to save enough in 5 years at most. If level 9 also requires 100 times more energy than the previous level, I will only have to work hard for 10 years. Su Ping's hand trembled with excitement. He would find out how to resurrect the little skeleton once the store was upgraded to level 9. Oi. What? The waiting wouldn't be too long. He could afford waiting a dozen years. It would have taken longer if he made money at the previous speed. However, his store had become popular during the war. Most customers were either ascendants and star lords or members of rich families. Most would pick professional training, raising the store's money-making efficiency by more than 10 times. Su Ping returned to the store, then asked Joanna and the others to keep receiving customers. He went to his master's residence. Xiao Su. Shen Huang was not too surprised as he sensed his disciple's aura. His reaction was much faster after returning to the celestial state and mastering a new universe. Surprise was still there, yet he could calm himself down in 1/1,000,000th of a millisecond. Su Ping sat down on a couch and asked, "How is everything going outside?" There were a few deep wrinkles on Shen Huang's forehead, probably due to frowning for too long. He shook his head and said, "Worms have been running rampant as of late, as if stimulated by something. Many places at the border were affected and there were a lot of casualties. Fortunately, reinforcements were sent in time. The situation is stable now." What was the reason? Su Ping was curious. Shen Huang looked at Su Ping. The former walked over and said, "I'll show you something." He made a pointing motion, summoning a picture of energy particles. It was as clear as a picture. Obviously, it was a scene from outer space. Weirdly enough, the space region being shown was extremely dark, in the shape of a vortex like a black hole. However, even if it were, stars should still be visible at the border of its attraction range. The place was even darker than a black hole. Chapter 1368, Anomaly of the Universe 2. Shen Huang moved his fingers to magnify the picture. A terrifying scene was immediately displayed. There were many planets in that place. However, their surfaces seemed to have rotten for some reason. All plants and buildings were half melted, as if soaked in powerful acids. Furthermore, those planets were arranged in a helical shape, with a hole at the center. Su Ping narrowed his eyes and looked at his master. "What's this?" "There's also this." Shen Huang displayed another picture, where a gigantic arm was floating in the void. However, upon closer look, it could be seen that one end of the arm was connected to a corpse. It seemed that the arm was reaching out somewhere beyond the universe. There. Shen Huang quickly snapped his fingers, displaying picture after picture. There were strange vines in space, piercing through and taking root in those planets, turning them into massive vases. There were also plenty of dead and cold dragons floating in space. It was quite weird. The celestials of all the star zones have moved there. To prevent leaving any innocent civilians behind, I organized an investigation group to comb through the abandoned planets. They didn't find anything at first. However, they started noticing those weird things in the past year. Shen Huang added in a gloomy tone, "Right now, almost all the population of the universe is now gathered here. 90% of the universe is currently desolate and uninhabited." Do you remember the merging of the universe I mentioned earlier? Su Ping couldn't help but look at the pictures. Master, are you saying that the universe is merging and those things were squeezed out of the deep spaces of the universe? That is correct. Shen Huang said solemnly. Such a merger was not a problem we had to solve immediately. After all, based on our observations, it was happening at a very slow rate. It could take at least 10,000 years before we had to take action. Our greatest concern was the worm tide. However, something seems to have happened. The merging has been significantly accelerated. He looked at Su Ping and continued, I asked Kaophalet to sneak into other star zones and investigate this. So far, it's reached the 6th space. It has even reached the 7th space in some areas. The detector she took with her showed that the merging is moving fast and is fluctuating a lot. It is highly abnormal. According to the specialists, the merging will be complete in 5 to 10 years. Su Ping frowned and asked, have they found out the reason? The man sighed and shook his head. Not yet. However, I suspect that some sort of power is pushing this change. It could be the alien hidden among the worms. But there's also another possibility. Our universe might have received some stimulation and accelerated the transformation on its own. As you said, every universe has wisdom. Maybe the universe we're living in is intelligent too. Su Ping's eyes glittered. In other words, it has decided to do this because of some sort of threat, to protect itself. It's possible. Shen Huang said, it's probably because of the worms rampaging as of late. But that's not a good thing for us. People like us will be fine once the universe is completely merged, but the ordinary folk won't have a chance to live peacefully anymore. Many planets will change fundamentally, and so will the overall environment of the universe. By then, even ascendant cultivators will have to struggle in order to live. We had originally planned to build a shelter before the merging of the universe was completed. It would be called the New Land. There would be similar shelters in all of the 12 star zones. Now that the worms are here, the new lands in the other star zones have already been abandoned. The new land in the Golden Star Zone has also been left aside because we're too busy dealing with the worms. Right now, even if we work at full speed, there won't be enough time. Su Ping became grave. If there's no time, we'll have to send those people into our small universes. Shen Huang said with a bitter smile, that's the only solution. However, based on my calculations, even if all the Celestials and the Ascendant Cultivators empty their small universes and worlds to accommodate them, there won't be enough room for all the population of the universe. There's barely enough room for half. A lot of people will be sacrificed. His expression showed sadness. Such catastrophe is unavoidable. Ever since ancient times, there have always been casualties in disasters like these. We can only strive to save as many as possible. Only half, Su Ping mumbled. Did it mean that the other half would be squeezed and killed during the merger? He thought that the worm tide was tricky enough. He didn't expect that the accelerated merging of the universe would be a greater disaster. After a moment of silence, Su Ping said to his master, I will think of a way. Stunned, Shen Huang couldn't help but look at Su Ping. What way do you have? If necessary, I will ask my employees to help. Su Ping thought of a solution. It should be possible to accommodate the other half if there are several dozen more Celestials. Several dozen Celestial state experts. Shen Huang was quite taken aback by Su Ping's proposal. He knew there was a Celestial state blonde in Su Ping's store. Had his disciple kept more Celestials hidden? Su Ping, however, was considering how to address the imminent problem. Judging from the current situation, he would have to hire more Celestial State employees from the cultivation sites. Shen Huang interpreted the silence. Su Ping wouldn't say anything unless he was certain. The former thought for a moment and said, it would be great if that problem can be addressed, but there are other troubles. Huh? Su Ping looked at his master. After the merging is finalized, not only will it be impossible for ordinary people to live, there will also be a resurgence of hidden existences left between the layers of the universe, as well as the power fragments from ancient times. The entire universe will very likely become a jungle. Even people like us will have to struggle to survive, Shen Huang said with utmost concern. Su Ping felt dazed for a moment. The outlook gave him a chill as he looked at the floating pictures and the terrifying scenes. He had encountered a lot of dangers when he tore through deep spaces. He also saw the terrifying beasts living in deep spaces. They would definitely be released in the outer world after the merger. Furthermore, ancient bodies like the war emperors would probably appear too. Even as corpses, they were determined to fulfill their duties. Some of those were probably different. Maybe they became the cradle of terrifying existences. When it rains, it pours, Su Ping was sullen. He felt terrible about his lack of strength. If he were an ancestral god, he would probably be able to easily take care of everything. Are there any updates about the alien among the worm tides? Asked Su Ping. That alien was a source for deep concern. After all, it was probably one of the heavens, a race that even the Golden Crow ancestor chose to hide from. No, it looks like it's gone, but nobody dares to go and confirm it. Only Celestials attract that thing's attention when they take action. Shen Huang shook his head. After a moment of silence, Su Ping said, "In any case, I want to know the moment anything happens. That alien is unimaginably dangerous." Seeing how serious Su Ping was, Shen Huang nodded. "Certainly." "Right, if the universe is merging, how's the situation in our area?" asked Su Ping. Shen Huang replied, "That is one of the weird things I wanted to talk to you about. All the areas we've found in the process of merging are in the desolate, unoccupied areas, ruins essentially. So far, this part of the universe is relatively stable. There's no sign of any merging." He looked at Su Ping and added, "If the universe is intelligent, do you think it's aware of us and is avoiding us on purpose?" Su Ping was dazed. If that was the case, the possibility was truly there. "Once I condense a Tao heart, maybe I'll be able to perceive the spirit of the universe. If I can communicate with it, maybe I'll find out about a lot of secrets." Su Ping's eyes glittered. He was even more eager to condense a Tao heart. Chapter 1369, War Outburst 1. Even if the universe is intelligent and is specifically avoiding our area, I don't think that would last long. There are some signs of merger in some places at the border, Shen Huang said. "In any case, we do our best and prepare." "All right." Su Ping nodded. Shen Huang wanted to say something else, but he suddenly changed his expression, as if he were listening to something. His expression turned grave. "What's wrong?" Su Ping narrowed his eyes. "There was an accident." Shen Huang finally replied half a minute later. He stood up with an awful expression. "The report just came in. A fortress at the border just collapsed. There was some sort of power that destroyed it straight away, and it kept on invading. Worms are also swarming in. This is a feed of the current situation." He waved a hand and displayed a scene. In a space fortress, countless remains of both humans and pets were floating in space. The rubble left over from the fortress was next to them. Worms were flooding in. Su Ping saw a lot of golden-armored worms and even the purple-armored kind at the rear. There weren't many of them, but their purple color was quite eye-catching. Their bodies were enormous. "Celestial Worm Kings." Su Ping slightly changed his expression. The worms had assaulted many places, but the purple-armored Worm Kings had rarely appeared. Lots of them had gathered to destroy one fortress. Were they going to launch a joint attack? Humans had discovered over the years that the worms were as smart as ordinary adults. Some of the Worm Kings were exceptionally cunning. Su Ping had tamed Greenie as a pet and knew fully well that those insects were intelligent. His first thought was that attacking the fortress by surprise was the worm's strategy. "Damn it!" Shen Huang wore an awful expression. Part of his consciousness was connected to the command room on the astral nexus. Someone posted in the front line was reporting. However, the information made him feel panicked. The fortress destruction had nothing to do with the Worm Kings. It had been done by an invisible power. The place was completely unable to resist and was instantly destroyed. Countless people were instantly ripped apart. Said power was at the moment surging towards the second line of defense behind the fortress and was unstoppable. Those who tried to stop it were killed without exception. Who would have thought that such an urgent situation would take place at the front line? Ziosu, I may have to ask Kaefalit to go there. Shen Huang listened to the battle reports. He didn't have to command in person. Many emergency measures had been taken by the military commanders. Hot weapons that could threaten ascendants were deployed on the battlefield to suppress the worms. In addition, the reinforcing ascendant cultivators had set up military formations to stop the enemy. Alas, the result was not ideal. She's yours to command. Su Ping didn't know what was going on in the front lines, but his body tightened, seeing how serious his master was. The previous deduction was that the war would last 1,000 years, or rather, humans would have to endure for 1,000 years. However, war was never as predictable as data. Accidents could happen at any time. The alien lurking among the worms in particular was an uncontrollable factor. It could destroy all defense lines immediately if it ever took action. Shen Huang summoned Kaefalit via telepathy, who rose from one of the buildings on that street and flashed over. She looked at Shen Huang and Su Ping respectfully. The Saint Heir from the planet of origin had essentially been killed and replaced with another personality, ever since Su Ping tampered with her memories. Shen Huang immediately ordered her to stop the worms along with the soldiers in the front line. Kai Huo and Su Kong arrived after she left. Both of them looked anxious. Kai Huo said, "The Anmu fortress was destroyed. The second line of defense there is also under attack and will soon be broken through. There are 6 worm kings there. Do we need to take action?" Shen Huang said gloomily, 6 worm kings. Those are all the worm kings we've detected recently. They want to tear the defense lines apart once and for all. However, the report I just received suggests that the fortresses weren't destroyed by them. I think the alien did it. Just wait until they reach the 5th defense line. Su Kong's cute face was cold. She said, "Are those worms trying to go all out? They never attacked so fiercely before. Did something stimulate them?" Shen Huang and Su Ping looked at each other, as they were immediately reminded of the universal merging they had just talked about. Was it going to affect the real world that soon? "I will send someone to the border of our star zone and investigate the merging, just to find out how bad it is," said Shen Huang quickly. Meanwhile, he reached out telepathically to another department and sent out the order. The merging of the universe. Both Kai Huo and Su Kong knew about that phenomenon. Their faces didn't look very good. "Ask the other Celestials to meet with us immediately. Also, have the 3rd defense line send battle reports right now. I want all the information we can gather about the enemy." Shen Huang gave the order. Kai Huo nodded. "I'll relay this to the other Celestials right now." He disappeared after saying that. Half a minute passed. The Celestials flashed to that place, one after the other. Meanwhile, Shen Huang had reached out to the 3rd defense line. The 2nd defense line was too busy fighting to respond. The intelligence analysis job could only be entrusted to the following defensive checkpoint. They had considered such an arrangement since the beginning, when they planned all defensive measures. So, the reconnaissance system of each defense line could cover the range of the previous 2 defense lines. Chapter 1370, War Outburst 2. Very soon, images were relayed by the 3rd defense line. A fierce battle was raging in the 2nd defense line. The scenes from the battle were instantly transmitted. Shen Huang waved a hand, transforming the building into another space to better project the scenery. Although soundless, severed limbs were flying everywhere. Countless battle pet warriors were charging at the worms. One could almost hear their brave and angry roars. Everybody wore somber expressions. Su Ping looked at the cruel and bloody battlefield. Even though he had seen countless deaths in cultivation sites, he was still shocked by what he was seeing. All his pores were constricted, not because of fear but of pure anger. "What's that?" Long Yang pointed in a certain direction on the battlefield, where an array of ascendant cultivators were fighting the worms. All of a sudden, the array seemed to have encountered an invisible wind blade. The array was simply cut apart instantly. Some of the ascendant cultivators died on the spot, and the others were jetted towards the worms like dumplings. They were quickly consumed. Kaihuo couldn't help but remark, did the Worm Kings take action? Impossible. Even creatures like them are unable to make a Titan formation collapse. He clenched his fists with anger and anxiety. Shen Huang, too, was very sullen. Su Ping had taught him the Titan military formation, and he shared it with the others. It was the best formation of ascendant rank in the Golden Star Zone. It had also been introduced to other star zones. Only a group of 8 ascendants were needed to unleash a power close to the celestial state. They would be stronger than any of the top heavenly lords. If 8 heavenly lords teamed up, they could emulate a combat ability of the celestial state. Even Shen Huang would be hard-pressed to beat them quickly. A mid-sized Titan divine array required a group of 36 people, with a more powerful enhancement. If exclusively formed with ascendants, they could unleash the power of the celestial state. There were also large Titan divine arrays, which required 72 people in the group. They could even defeat celestials. It would be hard to kill them, but the average celestial would have to escape. The array seen by Shen Huang was a small Titan divine array of 8 people, which was torn apart instantly. Not even celestial state worm kings could manage doing such a thing, unless their leader was a special mutant. Should we deploy large Titan divine arrays? One of the celestials asked. Shen Huang narrowed his eyes in silence. The members of the large Titan divine arrays were considered as the last reserves. They were strong, but they had to practice together for a long time to coordinate their divine power. The loss of any team member would be hard to bear. If things go on like this, the second defense line won't survive for more than 5 minutes, said a celestial solemnly. As crazy as it might have sounded, that was the truth. The worms' attacks were too fierce. The second defense line was enough to fend off a celestial cultivator for 1,000 years. However, it seemed unable to hold for more than 5 minutes at the moment. I've already sent Kaefalet. If the alien hiding among the worms takes action, we can only initiate the final plan. Annihilation, said Shen Huang solemnly. Everybody was overtaken by shock. They knew that the Saint Heir from the planet of origin had been enslaved by Su Ping. After all, they had been there for years, and they had already obtained that intelligence. Therefore, they were even more scared of Su Ping. Shen Huang had sent Kaefalet to help. Was she the bait? Su Ping stared at the projection in silence. His senses stretched into the void and observed the distant place through the original Dao world. However, he wasn't planning on getting close. He could only watch from afar. All of a sudden, his expression changed as he said, "Ask Kaefalet to come back." Huh. What Su Ping said gave everyone a shock. They quickly turned to look at him. Shen Huang asked in a daze, "What's the matter?" "It's the alien," Su Ping replied with gloom. "I detected a powerful aura lurking among the worms. The worm tide is just a disguise. It must have been the alien who tore the fortresses apart." While looking at the projection, a mid-sized Titan divine array fell apart all of a sudden. Dozens of ascendants were like collapsing ants as they moved toward the worms. They summoned their battle pets, but the struggle didn't last for long. The worms overwhelmed them. A mid-sized Titan divine array, which was as strong as a celestial cultivator, was destroyed just like that. Based on the power waves he had just detected, Su Ping's expression took a turn for the worse. It was none other than the alien taking action. The expressions of all the experts present changed. They agreed on Su Ping's statement. If it wasn't the alien who could kill a celestial with ease, how could the Worm Kings achieve that? All of them were compelled to look at Shen Huang with grief on their faces. Annihilation. It was the plan they had discussed to cope with the most dangerous scenario. The alien among the worms had always been the problem. It finally revealed itself. The annihilation plan had been prepared for it. However, aside from the alien, they would be annihilated too. "Everyone get ready," Shen Huang said in a low voice. They exchanged looks. Not a single word was said. They knew that such a day would eventually arrive. Although Celestials couldn't enter the battlefield because they were scared of the alien, the latter had already led the worms to their base. They had to fight back. There was no time to consider anything else. According to the Annihilation Plan, the 8 Celestials were going to establish a Titan Divine Array, activate an ancient mysterious realm, and send the alien there. The ancient mysterious realm had been recorded as a forbidden land by the Federation. It was said to lead somewhere beyond the universe. It was so dangerous that even Celestials would think carefully before venturing inside. A few Celestials went to explore when it was just found, but 2 of them died. The place had been marked as forbidden ever since then. It was a taboo even among Celestials. The place was eventually forgotten by the public since no one paid it any more attention. That place would be used once more, but not for exploration or development. Rather, it would be harnessed as a weapon to deal with the disaster. The Celestials from the other star zones had been studying the Titan Divine Array since they joined the Alliance. They cooperated and managed to deploy the array. However, the level of enhancement wasn't as great as would happen with the arrays powered by Ascendants. The small Titan Divine Array made with 8 Celestials allowed them to crush any Celestial. Even so, they weren't confident of taking down a universe dominator. Considering the power they were able to unleash, their impression was that they merely reached the peak of the celestial state. Maybe if they could deploy a large Titan Divine Array made of 72 Celestials, they could defeat a universe dominator. But where could they find that many Celestials? I heard that Mr. Su helped Shen Huang return to the celestial state. If we are unlucky and die in battle, we hope that Mr. Su can help us recover our celestial bodies as per the agreement. The others also looked at him eagerly. They were willing to take the risk partly because they wouldn't really die. At worst, they would only lose their celestial bodies. Su Ping was going to say something but then suddenly narrowed his eyes. Wait a second. Hello, sorry for leaving a message here, as I don't recall having an email to contact you. Chapter 1371, Slaying the Heavens 1. Something unexpected happened in the fortress, as seen in the projection. The void fell apart, and countless arms began to spread out like algae in the deep sea. They were large in number and looked ghastly. They were coming out from deeper spaces, reaching out for the worms as if being controlled. The other people noticed the change on the battlefield too. Such a turn of events was rather surprising. What the hell is that? It seems to be helping us though. It seems to be a body. The Celestials spread out their senses toward the battlefield. Although their vision wasn't as clear as Su Ping's, they could see something, more or less. It was a terrifying aura, like a storm from the abyss. They felt like leaves on the ocean in front of such an aura, which could be overturned at any minute. Ancient corpses. Su Ping had already realized the nature of those arms. They were actually an amalgamation of ancient corpses. There were no signs of vitality, only a strong obsession driving them, even after death. Roar! All of a sudden a deafening roar sounded throughout the entire universe. The roar was extremely abrupt. It wasn't part of the projection. It traveled throughout the planet like a super light. All the streets and buildings were trembling. The roar echoed in everybody's heads, making their blood flow faster. A few seconds later, screams were heard bursting out all over the place. On the streets, people were holding their heads on the ground. Some even had blood in their ears and eyes. They couldn't stand the terrifying willpower carried by the roar. Some even fell to their knees, sticking their heads to the ground as if wanting to bury them in the soil. Damn it! Everybody sensed the collective misery on the planet and their faces contorted. The roar originated from somewhere several defense lines away and had been weakened by the divine arrays protecting the planet. Even so, it was still tremendously powerful. Is this the power of a universe dominator? It's here. Su Ping gazed at the projection. By means of the original Tao world, he had already sensed the source of the roar. The alien hiding among the worms couldn't hold back anymore and revealed its aura. Then the worms became a mess and collapsed at the center. A figure with a strange body structure slowly stood up. Its skin was dark blue, but it was more like a combination of skin and shell, unlike a simple shell would be. There was a deep Tao pattern mark on that skin structure. When Su Ping saw the arm, he instantly realized that the alien was the entity that fought the War Emperor's body outside the crack in the universe. Is it one of the heavens? Su Ping looked in a daze. In terms of appearance, the guy looked very similar to a human being. However, unlike humans, there seemed to be a lot of insect-like tissues making its body. The skin on its neck was tough, like the abdomen of an insect. Its arms were pointed, and the chest seemed to be made of some sort of organs, but already hardened like armor. The appearance alone could have frightened a lot of people. Su Ping had seen many kinds of ferocious creatures in the chaotic realm of the undead, but never one as creepy as that one. His back was cold and sweat began to drip. It had been years since he was that fearful. It was like some genetic response activated in his body, making him tremble instinctively. What's that? A celestial asked, but his voice was hoarse. Su Ping looked at them, only to find they were pale as sheets, as if they had just seen a ghost. Maybe it's one of the legendary heavens. Su Ping wore a complicated expression. The heavens were supreme. Even some of them were villains like the ones found among gods, yet they were a rare and noble species in general. To think the guy would look like that. On the battlefield, all the arms seemed to have found the target after the alien showed up and quickly reached for it. Meanwhile, more and more torn bodies were crawling out of deeper spaces. You're already dead. Do not reveal yourselves again. The alien stood among the worms, cold and aggressive. I buried you back then. I can do that again right now. As it talked, it suddenly waved its arms and invoked a wheel of light in the void. What shocked Su Ping was that, although the wheel seemed to be a weapon, it was actually a series of interconnected small universes. It was a terrifying sight. Multiple universes? No, wait. Su Ping could tell that those universes were similar, with only minor differences. If they were multiple universes, they would have been condensed from different Tao hearts. However, there is just one universe that contains everything. Even if you're capable of creating two universes, it's unnecessary. It's better to just melt the two universes to make them more powerful. Su Ping looked at the strange wheel of light, sensing some sort of terrifying aura that chilled him to the bone, even though he was multiple defense lines away. He's just a god emperor, but he's much stronger than the gods who reached the god emperor realm. If he hadn't seen his fair share of god emperors and even ancestral gods, he would have thought that the alien was an ancestral god. However, even though the guy's aura was terrifying, it was still within the limits of god emperors. System, is that one of the heavens that the Golden Crow ancestor has been hiding from? Su Ping asked in his heart, trying to confirm. However, he wasn't really hopeful. The system would always prefer for him to search for answers on his own. It rarely answered, except when he asked about pets. Yes. Su Ping received an answer after a long silence. Seriously? Su Ping was stunned, eyes slightly narrowed. Although he had already made his own speculations, he was still shocked when it was confirmed. That is one of the heavens. That's the ancestral skill of the heavens, the Wheel of Judgment. The system's voice was calm and cold. It's made of a power unique to the heavens. That is also the reason why the heavens are able to crush other lives on the same cultivation realm. Su Ping was surprised since the system had given him such a detailed explanation. He immediately asked, "What about the corpses? They seem to have been god emperors when they were alive. Are they being controlled by the wisdom of our universe?" After another long silence, the system said, "The wisdom of the universe wouldn't control them. It's just a lingering obsession in their bodies." What obsession? Slay the heavens. Su Ping felt dazed. Slay the heavens. He immediately remembered what the Golden Crow ancestor said, and the war that once broke out in the Archean divinity. The heavens were behind all of that. Those who had died never forgot their mission, even after their vitality and consciousness had perished. However, their remains were still stimulated by the aura of the heavens and became crazy. What exactly happened? Why are the heavens so hated? Su Ping thought. A great battle burst out at the defense line. The alien and the corpses from deeper spaces were fighting in a different time and space, disappearing from everyone's sight. However, they could tell that a tide was rising in the deep spaces nearby, and it might surge out at any moment. Chapter 1372, The Fire Seed Plan 1. "Those ancient corpses from the deeper spaces seem to be helping us," said one of the Celestials, feeling shock and suspicion. "Why are they helping us?" "I once saw a similar scene in the deeper spaces years ago. Some ancient corpse was still moving, even though it was long dead. It was fighting some beast." "I've also heard of such incidents. The universe is so vast, there are too many secrets we can't unravel yet." All the Celestials looked solemn. The ghastly corpses, for whatever reason, were fighting the alien, which was in their best interest. "Do you think it's because of some legacies remaining inside those corpses?" someone asked all of a sudden. The thought left them in a daze. Their expressions changed a bit. Those ancient corpses, being able to stand their ground against the alien, were probably universe dominators in the past. The legacy in the ancient corpse that appeared in the Mayhem star zone was acquired by the Saint Heir from the planet of origin, and was very likely a universe dominator's legacy. It was very likely that they could achieve a breakthrough if they could obtain those legacies. None of them had dared to visit the Mayhem star zone because they feared being affected by the reigning laws and surrounded by other forces, if not killed. Noticing the glint in their eyes, Su Ping said gloomily, "They're trying to buy time for us. If they can't stop the aliens, there's no way our defense lines can. There must be a reason why the alien dared to show up. Do you have any place to run to?" Everyone snapped out of their daydreaming after hearing what Su Ping said. It wasn't the time for finding legacies. Besides, there wasn't even a chance for them to fight over them. The arrival of those ancient corpses was their last chance. The consequences would be dire if they failed to block the enemy. "There's nowhere to go. We have yet to find where the planet of origin was spirited off to." Shen Huang was grave. When they set up the alliance, they were ready for a life-and-death battle, but none of them expected it to happen that fast. They thought the war would last 1,000 years, but something unexpected took place in a few years' time. The atmosphere in the conference room became heavy. Nobody looked good. One of the celestial state experts broke the silence. "Should we prepare a batch of seeds?" Shen Huang glanced at him and the others before he slowly said, "It's time we initiate the fire seed plan that we've talked about. This is our last endeavor." Then he looked at Su Ping and said, "Zio Su, in the unfortunate chance that we fail, I hope that you'll take with you some seeds and help them survive in the universe, to prevent the extermination of humanity." Su Ping was stunned. He was never involved in that plan. He asked, "You want me to escape?" "Not escape, but escort," Kai Huo corrected Su Ping and said, "The fire seed plan that we came up with was for the worst-case scenario. We'll pick 12 batches of seeds and send them to 12 desolate places of the universe where they can re-establish order. There won't be that many of them, to avoid catching attention. The seeds of the Golden Star Zone will be taken care of by you. They're also the most likely batch to survive." Su Ping slightly changed his expression. He didn't realize that those people had already made arrangements for him. "I disagree," said Su Ping. Shen Huang looked at Su Ping with a solemn expression. "Zio Su, don't be sentimental. You're not a deserter. Someone must take care of the others in such perilous times. Your mission is harder than ours." Su Ping shook his head and said, "Master, it's not me acting tough, and I don't care what other people say. If we're truly defeated, I will escape with the seeds you've arranged at the last moment, even if I'm called a deserter. However, the time has not come yet. I hope that I can fight until the last moment with you before we escape." All the experts were stunned. For a moment they looked at Su Ping in a different light. They seemed to respect and acknowledge him. The Celestials from the other star zones in particular, they saw the strong yet arrogant youngster in a completely different way. So, the man is not just capable of suppressing others with strength. He also has a respectable heart. Shen Huang said with comfort in his eyes, "I'm glad you understand." "The ancient corpses are fighting the alien. Should we help them?" asked one of the Celestials. Can we intervene? Another celestial state expert was concerned about their strength. That was a battle between universe dominators. They could easily get killed if they got involved. Sukong said, maybe, we need to try using the mid-sized Titan Divine Array. Someone shook his head and replied, that one requires 36 celestials to work. There aren't that many of us. There are probably enough if we take your pets into account, said Sukong. Everybody was stunned for a moment. They had the idea in the past. However, someone had done calculations and found that there weren't enough celestials. Noticing that Sukong was looking at him, Su Ping realized what she was thinking. He nodded and said, it's feasible. We can help the ancient corpses beat the alien with the power of the mid-sized Titan Divine Array. We and our pets are 28 celestials in total. How many do you have, Mr. Su? A celestial expert asked. 28. Su Ping calculated for a moment and said, close enough. Let's hurry and start practicing. Everybody was astonished, not expecting that he would truly be able to provide 8 more celestials. Chapter 1373, The Fire Seed Plan 2. Let's leave this place to the advisors and computers and practice in my universe. I can accelerate time there by 200-fold without affecting your understanding of the Great Tao, said Shen Huang. His universe was one of time and space. Time could be accelerated 1,000 times faster than in the original universe. However, if the difference was too wide, it would affect their understanding of the Great Tao and hinder their cultivation. 200 times was already the maximum for cultivation. Normal celestials could only accomplish 100-fold acceleration. All right, Su Ping nodded. Shen Huang glanced at the young man, suspecting that Su Ping had given him the universe of time and space for such a moment. Why else pick that universe of all universes? Everybody agreed and took action. While Shen Huang opened his universe and allowed everyone in, Su Ping returned to the pet room. He briefly told his people about the situation outside. Then, he left with the Inferno Dragon, the Cauldron Woman, and the others. Although the Inferno Dragon and the rest of his pets had yet to reach the celestial state, they were already as strong after all the training. They had condensed their respective small universes and were looking for their Tao hearts just as Su Ping was. Su Ping returned to the conference room soon after. Only Shen Huang was left. Entering another person's universe was extremely dangerous. The celestials from the other star zones wouldn't have accepted if things were like before. After all, they would be at Shen Huang's mercy after entering his universe. Maybe because of their teamwork in recent years, or the same stance deep in their hearts, none of them suspected or rejected at that moment. Su Ping and his master looked at each other, both guessing what the other was thinking and were quite delighted. As the war reached that point, whether or not they could win it in the end, they were all truly ready to fight side by side as a team. Su Ping and Shen Huang also entered the universe of time and space shortly after. The universe was vast and desolate. Shen Huang had yet to build prosperous planets there. There were only barren stars that looked like mud balls. The celestial experts stood in the void, summoning one celestial pet after the other. Some pets were as massive as half a planet, standing majestically in the air. Some were tiny and leaned against their masters' shoulders like petite women. 2 men and a woman showed up next to Shen Huang. One of them was an old man, the other was a white-haired brawny man, and the last one was a cold-looking woman. Su Ping became gloomy upon seeing them. Elder Yan, the one who taught him techniques on behalf of his master, was gone. Back in the Mayhem Star Zone battle, not only did his master's original body perish, Elder Yan also died with him. All 3 pets gave Su Ping a slight nod. They had obviously learned of news about him from Shen Huang. Even the cold-looking woman seemed gentle and approachable when she looked at Su Ping. The other celestial state experts also had their pets assume human shapes. It would be easier to practice the Titan Divine Array if they were of similar sizes. The Divine Array would be unimaginably massive if the pets kept their original form. Some celestials only had a single pet of celestial cultivation, while others had 2 or 3. Even without the deceased Elder Yan, Shen Huang actually had the most celestial pets. That's the thousand-tailed beast, right? Has she risen to the celestial state too? Someone looked at the cold woman by Shen Huang's side in a daze. So has the white dragon. Another celestial state expert changed his expression. It seemed to be a heavenly lord 30,000 years ago. Shen Huang looked at them and said peacefully, "My original self died in the Mayhem Star Zone battle. They wanted to avenge me, so they broke the shackles and luckily rose to the celestial state." His greatest reward from the Mayhem Star Zone was the breakthrough of his two heavenly lord pets. Although the breakthrough was rather late, he could still make up for his shortage of strength even after his original self perished. He had just returned to the celestial state with Su Ping's help and was even stronger than before. Adding the two pets that had broken through, he was already stronger than most celestials. His overall power was only second to Su Ping in that place. "I wonder if my pet will break through too if I die someday." A celestial state expert smiled with a bitter and envious expression. Not only did Shen Huang recruit a genius disciple such as Su Ping, he even had two celestial state pets. He was truly a winner. "Mr. Su Ping, you didn't bring the blonde employee from your store, did you?" Someone looked at Su Ping and asked. After all, the array's completion depended on Su Ping. They already knew that there was a celestial employee in his store. They had even been there to check her, only to find that she wasn't just in a celestial but also extremely strong. They were terrified. Su Ping didn't explain. It was impossible for Joanna to leave the store, but it was possible to take the Cauldron Woman and the Sutra Old Man. They were Yi Chen's items to begin with. Those two had evolved after being trained for years in cultivation sites by Su Ping. Both were celestials, and among the strongest ones at that. One of them was an Emperor-level sutra, and the other had the potential of an Emperor-level item. They had yet to recover fully, and were essentially wounded God Emperors. It was hard for a heavily wounded God Emperor to return to peak form quickly, even in a place like the Heaven Path Institute. However, even though they had yet to recover, they were already in the celestial state. That was their highest level when they followed Yi Chen back then. They were rising even higher, to the peak of the celestial state. Su Ping summoned them. Their abundant celestial aura stunned everybody, rooting them on the spot. Shen Huang recognized them as the items looted from Yi Chen's treasury, but they were much more terrifying than before. He didn't expect them to rise to the celestial state while under Su Ping's control. Then Su Ping went ahead and summoned the Inferno Dragon, the Dark Dragon Hound, the Young Chaos Beast, the Purple Python, and the Vast Sky Thunderous Dragon. Adding Su Ping himself, there were 8 beings with celestial state combat ability. In fact, Su Ping's Void Bug had already evolved into a purple-armored Worm King. While wandering in cultivation sites during the past 100 years, Su Ping had hunted plenty of celestial beasts from various species. He had thrown them to the Void Bug as food. The latter absorbed all their essence, making it evolve faster. Su Ping had focused on training the Void Bug ever since the Worm Tide arrived. If Greenie became a God Emperor, he thought that the fella could probably suppress all the worms on its own. Su Ping had studied the traits of Greenie's species. Worms respected their hierarchy even more than dragons did. One Worm King was enough to command a whole clan. That Worm Tide had been initiated by the ultimate Worm King hiding in the depths of the swarm. There were altogether 6 Worm Kings, which were essentially 6 commanders. There was a high chance that the Worm Kings were being controlled by the alien. Aside from the Void Bug, the Lightning Rat was also inching closer to condensing a small universe. Su Ping believed that it would break through very soon. Su Ping had seen how hard the Lightning Rat had been working to catch up. It was the one who had been crazier during training. However, it was still too far behind when compared to the others, even though it was working hard. Everybody was astonished by the pets around Su Ping, Shen Huang being the most shocked of all. He recognized those pets and knew how weak they used to be. However, all of them had risen to the celestial state. Those pets, potential and bloodline, were extremely inferior. One of the celestial state experts couldn't help but ask, Are they all your pets, Mr. Su? Su Ping nodded. They're all my partners. 5. The others had originally thought that Shen Huang had a lot of pets. None of them expected that Su Ping would have more. However, they also felt reassured upon remembering the latter's terrifying combat ability. Considering Su Ping's strength, it wasn't hard for him to subdue a celestial pet. However, even though the universe was vast, it was really difficult to run such a high-profile beast. They hadn't encountered many of those, even though they had lived a very long time. Every celestial pet was worth fighting over. Most of the celestial pets they owned had advanced from lower levels. Chapter 1374, Faith 1. Everybody became hopeful upon seeing that there were enough celestial experts. If they could truly establish a mid-sized Titan divine array, they would probably have a shot at contending with a universe dominator. Let's practice, said Su Ping, unwilling to waste any time. Shen Huang nodded and said to the group, considering that Xiao Su is the strongest, he will be responsible for the core. He will be the head and everybody else will take other parts of the body. Any objections? Nope. It's only natural. Everybody nodded. Even though they had a conflict in the Astral Nexus conferencing room, all hostility towards Su Ping and Shen Huang was dropped once the alliance was established. Even if some were still angry, they prudently held back to face a greater enemy together. All right, let's begin. Shen Huang instantly transmitted the chapter of the mid-sized Titan divine array to the team. Su Ping had just given it to him. It would have been useless to have before, as there weren't enough celestials. Very soon, both warriors and pets received the information. They began to practice. Su Ping turned into the divine array's main node. He released his own power and accepted everybody else. The first practice ended in failure soon after. Some celestials didn't even figure out how the divine array operated. They made mistakes and the array collapsed. Nobody blamed them. After the failure, Shen Huang encouraged the group to try again. No words were said as they quietly re-established the divine array. After failing time and again, the mid-sized Titan divine array gradually took shape. Meanwhile, in the fortress outside, the worms were surging and swallowing the second defense line. The worms had easily reached the second defense line through the opening made by the alien. A fierce battle was taking place. Many ascendants went to the battlefield with their pets. Blood-torn limbs, bombardment bellowing. In the middle of the vast battlefield caught in the heated atmosphere, all the battle pet warriors had forgotten themselves. They only had the faith of fighting until they could beat back the worms. Dad, will we win? Back on the planets, behind the defense line, the residents were watching the life-and-death battles on the big screen. All the entertainment programs were stopped at the moment. All the people of the different star zones and planets, whose skin, eye, and hair color was different, were wearing the same expression. They were praying, deeply worried. A father gritted his teeth and said, "Yes, we will certainly win. Those are the Rets, they're charging again. I didn't know that the cowardly Rets could be so crazy. I hope that they'll survive." Many races loathed each other in the vast universe. However, some people were discovering that some races they hated from the bottom of their hearts were actually much different from how they had imagined. Their understanding of those races had been based on media and rumors. In fact, most ordinary people would spend their entire lives in the comfortable cradle made by their race, never really getting to know the outside world. They discovered that many things were different from what they had imagined once they saw the feed with their own eyes. Boom! While everybody watched, eager and nervous, the second defense line didn't stand stably as everybody was praying for. Rather, it was being torn apart and more ascendants died. As for the weaker star lords and star state cultivators, they were falling like dust all the time. Too many of them died. As the worm tide approached, a noise burst out of the deeper spaces next to the second defense line. A massive hole appeared in the void, with arms and heads darting out. Those limbs and heads were extremely huge. There were wounds on their surfaces, but the blood was dry. All of them were dry corpses. Torn arms and heads were thrown away. Meanwhile, a hideous and scary figure crawled out of the hole. It was none other than the alien from before. The entire defense line was in turmoil upon seeing the alien. The battle-frenzied warriors sobered up, as if doused with cold water. All of a sudden a strange syllable sounded, echoing throughout the void. The second defense line was abruptly solidified, as if frozen. The next moment, a heartbreaking scene took place. All the battle pet warriors at the defense line, from the weaker soldiers to the strong ascendant commanders, exploded and were pulverized like smoke. The appalling scene on the screen made the entire Golden Star Zone fall silent. All the people watched in a daze, nearly suffocating. How was that possible? The command center was silent. The advisors from all star zones of the universe were gathered there. They were the smartest people, and yet they were all dazed and confused. Such power was not something they could tackle using their wisdom. In the silence, someone roared, "Wake up, all of you." The roar drew everyone back to reality. An advisor continued, shouting with blazing eyes, "The battle isn't over yet. We can't give up. All the Celestials are practicing the Titan Divine Array. We need to buy them more time. Until the very last moment, not even gods can make us lower our heads." His roar shocked and woke them up. Maybe because of his words, and maybe because of the desperate situation, a strong eagerness to survive and the terrifying surge of faith when humans resisted disasters started bursting out from them. That's right, we must stall him. Even if we have to block him with our bodies, we have to hold him back. Chapter 1375, Faith 2. Everybody had a powerful faith. Orders were instantly sent out, one after the other. The entire defense line and the command center were revived. The command center was like the brain. Once the brain became excited, the soldiers in other defensive positions were quickly mobilized to the second defense line. Shala shala. The worms passed by the alien and swarmed towards the second defense line, and soon occupied the whole section. However, once the worms arrived, the bombs that had been planted in advance were detonated. Countless worms were killed and destroyed in a flash. An arc-shaped, bloody fire illuminated the starry sky. However, more worms swarmed over like dark clouds after the fire burnt out. They crushed the second defense line and moved towards the third defense line. The alien also flew towards the third defense line. The void opened a second time. Arms came out and attacked him. However, the alien was fast to react. He threw out his wheel of judgment and slashed off the arms. Then the creature moved onward, ignoring the remains from an old age. The more you try to stop me, the more likely it was hidden here. The alien's eyes were all coldness. Although he could sense the target, he believed in his own judgment. Once the target was found, he would be able to send the word out. It's coming. In the third defense line, everyone narrowed their eyes and looked ahead. The universe was quiet, and so were they. They could almost hear the crawling sounds of worms from a distance. The worms quickly reached the third defense line, breaking the silence. Countless soldiers were roaring. The alien approached in an unhurried manner while others fought. He looked at the soldiers in the third defense line and uttered another strange syllable. The void trembled abruptly, and so did everyone fighting there. Then they became solid and were then broken to pieces. The scene was exactly the same as it happened in the second defense line. Everybody was desperate. There had been lots of soldiers in the massive defense line, and yet they couldn't resist that alien's one syllable. The power gap made them feel desperate. Is that thing a celestial? Where are our celestial experts? Why is this happening? Is humankind really going to perish? On every planet, countless people were filled with despair as they watched. Civilians and billionaires alike were pale as they watched. At the fourth defense line, a group of people stood in front of the fortresses with awful expressions. The third defense line is gone too. It's too fast. I wonder if we can resist the attack. It would be so not worth it if we just die like this. Those people's auras were concealed and powerful. All of them were ascendants. Some of them were even famous heavenly lords. There were many faces that Su Ping was familiar with, including Song Yuan, Chunyu, Liu Zia, and others. They were ready to sacrifice themselves in battle. However, the onslaught that took place on the third defense line made them feel desperate. It would be fine if they died after fighting to exhaustion. Considering their combat abilities, at least they would have killed countless worms by then. They were only afraid of not even resisting the alien's yell. Such a way to die was too frustrating. However, nobody backed off at that moment. There was nowhere to go. Behind them was the last line of defense. Song Yuan broke the silence. Let's go forward and fight them. We'll be able to hold them back for a moment. Even if the alien shows up and kills us all, he will have to attack again when he comes here. His words shocked them all. Leave the defense line and resist the enemy halfway. Is it any different from suicide? However, everyone was silent after hearing the proposal. Indeed, the entire defense line would be erased if they couldn't resist the alien yell. They were heavenly lords, but they were still in the ascendant realm. The alien was a universe dominator, which was 2 levels stronger, who was confident of stopping him. The ever-taciturn Chunyu said, "I agree." His eyes were cold. This way, we will be the 3.5 defense line, creating another obstacle for the enemy. Master and the others are practicing the divine array. We must buy time for them. You are downright crazy, said someone with a bitter smile. Have we truly reached the end? Liu Zia whispered. The famous heavenly lord seemed lost and regretful too. However, there wasn't the slightest trace of fear on her face. Everybody dies. Let's make sure that our deaths are glorious. Someone stood out casually and determined with the pride of a heavenly lord. That's right. There's nowhere to go. Putting our lives on the line is the only choice, declared Song Yuan. Then, without hesitation, he simply charged towards the void. He didn't force the others to follow. After all, it was a suicide mission. How I hate this. One of the ascendants heaved a sigh. Then he unsheathed his sword and followed Song Yuan as they headed to the distance. Liu Zia summoned her pets. Her eyes were gentle and pitiful. Sorry, I should remove the contract and let you go, but I still need your power. It's an honor to die with you, master, said all her pets, obedient and respectful. The next moment, Liu Zia also embarked on the journey with her pets. My descendants, your ancestor will block the enemy for you until the very last moment. Some heavenly lord looked back, peering toward a certain planet in space. The next moment he moved forward. No hesitation marred his stance either. One heavenly lord after the other followed Song Yuan to the darkness ahead, knowing they would never return. Their determined and harrowing voices were captured and transmitted to everyone watching. Countless people shed tears. In space, Song Yuan and the others had already met the worms halfway. Is that the alien? Song Yuan saw the alien moving at the rear of the swarm coming from the distance. He could only perceive the creature. It was some sort of strange yet twisted coldness. It was high and lofty, as well as unpredictable, like the darkness in the abyss. The mere aura had made Song Yuan feel a chill. He knew that he couldn't even beat one of the alien's fingers. That was a universe dominator. He took a deep breath, and scorching battle intent started to burst out of his eyes. He summoned his pets and charged at the swarming worms. Song Yuan and the other heavenly lords were like tiny fireflies before the swarm, and were soon drowned. However, right after they were overrun, they unleashed flames that burned the worms. Die! Liu Zia and the others followed him and roared ferociously. Soon, a tremendous number of worms were killed. Several openings were made as worms died. A purple light was flashing among the invaders. They were a few purple-armored worm kings. One of them jumped out, trying to execute Song Yuan and the others who were surrounded at the moment. It's the Worm King. Song Yuan and the others slightly changed expressions, instantly feeling they had been locked onto. Exactly at that moment, a dazzling, golden light shot through space from a distance. It turned out to be a gigantic golden sword. The sword cut through time and space. It came from a place within the defense lines and slashed to exterminate the worms. The purple-armored Worm King, which was about to exert its full strength, was hit by the sword. Despite its gargantuan body, it was like an ant under the finger of a giant and was easily killed off. The unexpected scene left everyone in shock. The next moment, everybody turned to look back, only to see a dazzling giant striding towards the worms, as if emerging from times of yore. One step of that giant crossed billions of kilometers. Master Song Yuan and the others saw the golden giant, and their blood almost flowed backwards. Even though they couldn't see their master's face, they knew it was the titan that all the Celestials had built up together.